Happy, the ball itself has its own energy, or life force, if you will. Its natural environment is in the hole. So why don't you send him home? His bags are packed. He's got his airplane tickets. Bring him to the airport. Send him home.
Send him home. Just send him home. It's time to go home there, ball.
Son of a bitch, Ball, why didn't you just go home? That's your home! Are you too good for your home? Answer me!
All right, everybody, welcome back to another week of Muskies on Tap. We are really excited to bring you this episode. Honestly, could call it a mega episode. I don't know what it's going to come out to be. It is currently 10 p.m. on a Tuesday night. We've been going strong since 7-ish. So we got a whole lot packed into this one. I hope people enjoy the long format. We really do. It kind of helps, not put any parameters on flowing with, talking with our guests and asking questions and kind of going on tangents, because that's what we like to do. As we say to the people that we're interviewing, we're like, we just let it riff, go from there, and just see what happens by the end of it. And but tonight you're going to hear Austin Wiggerman of Austin Wiggerman Guide Service of Northern Illinois, Southern Wisconsin, Geneva, Fox Chain. And he also mentioned he goes to Minnesota midsummer. We had a great talk with him. And we also had a little surprise guest. Max, I just got you on right here, right now. And Brian's not able to make it. Do we tell the listeners the surprise guest at all? Or do we keep it? Do we make them listen all the way through and get to that point, or do we give them a little hint? What do we do?
Well, either way, however you want to dial it up, Gus. I mean, he's been a previous guest on. He just makes a quick appearance. And always good to see his shining face. I am a little bit remiss tonight to miss out on our beautiful boy, Brian Eckel, but it is his busy season with work, so we definitely understand that. He's got some travels going on, and it also is his birthday. So everyone give a little shout out to Brian Eckel. Shout out, big birthday boy today.
Shout out.
When this comes
Happy
out,
birthday.
he'll be a year older. He'll be a year wiser, and all that.
Sure
all
about that?
that goes into
Does he have
probably
facial
not
hair
maybe
yet?
wiser. Yeah. Probably not wiser, but he'll definitely be a year older. He gives me a hard time for being an old head, but he'll be here soon. So goes quick. Wish him a very happy birthday here today, and we'll probably reconvene with him next week. So hopefully you guys don't miss him too much. We made up for it, I think, plenty tonight with an awesome interview with Austin. We just got done with it. I will say it was one of those interviews where I felt like we just could have kept riffing. He's a younger guy. We share a lot of common interests, not only in muskie fishing, but outside. So had a blast talking with him. Unfortunately our paths have never crossed in person, but I don't think that'll last too much longer. And looking forward to either sharing the bowl with him in the future or meeting him at a show or two or whatnot. So excited for you guys to hear this one. Outside of that, obviously we got a quick touch on our Green Bay Packers. Tough loss.
Yeah. We don't have residential guest Brian talking about that. He's always the sports guru talker, football fanatic.
Yeah, I ride and die with my pack. I think it was a great season, a lot to hold our heads on, and we'll be back better than ever next year. But enough football chatter. Season's done here in Wisconsin. Excited to see the AFC and NFC championship games, but it's going to be another winter, spring, summer, and early fall until we see our boys back in action on the field. So in the meantime, let's dial up this interview and you guys enjoy some great muskie chatter tonight.
Hell yeah. Let's get that going and stay tuned afterwards for a special guest about the upcoming Hint Hint Road Rules event. Hint Hint. All right. Here's the interview with Austin. Greg.
Oh, Greg.
Oh, Greg. All right, dialing it up. All right, guys, here on the line tonight, we have Austin Wiggerman with Austin Wiggerman Guide Service. We got him on because we always wanted to chat muskies with him and the lakes that he fishes. And he also was at the Chicago show, so we're going to ask him about that as well. So anyways, Austin, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing wonderful. I appreciate you guys having me on, getting this to work out. Glad I figured out the Wi-Fi situation. At least hopefully my audio comes through decent enough. But thanks for having me on tonight.
Yeah, of course. Audio sounds good. I think it's better than where you were before. So hopefully stays the way it is.
It
And
should now. It should now.
yeah. So we were just chatting before recording here, but how was the Chicago show? I heard you were there the whole time and you had a seminar, so let us know how that went.
Yeah, the Chicago show is good. Honestly, I'm always a big fan of the shows. I don't got a booth to really set up or worry about selling too much, but I always help Team Rhino set up, which their booth is always a task. They just bring a ton of baits. So it's kind of it's a little depressing though. You set up a bunch of these gorgeous baits and you're just feeling that hole in your pocket burn deeper and deeper. But no, it was good. It was another solid show. It's always fun catching up and seeing everybody from the season and clients and everything from around my area. But it seemed like numbers were probably a little bit lower than normal. At least normal as in the last 2 years. But
Mhm.
there's a lot of gorgeous baits. I know a lot of people walking out there smiling, and yeah, the seminar was cool. I will say it's an awesome opportunity to be able to speak at a seminar or have a seminar at the show. It was cool, and I honestly Sunday morning you can only expect so much nowadays for having a group. But we had a good group, and it kind of felt personable, which was I think it's always good. You get in too big of a numbers crowd, and I feel like you really can't go back and forth. It's not really as much of a discussion. It's more just me up there yapping, which I know that's why guys showed up, but it was a perfect size group. It was a good seminar. So overall, the weekend was a fun time. Always is.
Yeah, you're our boots on the ground correspondent here for the Chicago show because Gus and I were not able to make it down there. So I, with the seminar thing, I saw a little bit when you were doing, some promotion for it. You kind of incorporated some videos into your seminar. How did that go, I guess, as far as like showing the videos and kind of teaching? And then is this have you done seminars in the past, or was this one of your first ones that you've done at one of the shows?
So this was the first one that I've done at one of the shows, which that's why it was the
Cool.
first of anything, especially at the show seasons, it's always like you get so amped up and you're all nervous
Yeah.
and stuff. But the second you start
Mhm.
talking, and like I said, it's nice having a little bit of a smaller crowd where you can discuss beforehand, really get to meet the guys and stuff. But yeah, like I said, it was a cool opportunity doing it at the shows. I've done a bunch, but like you guys, we were talking before we started on the Fish with Teeth thing. That's just a page I put together with my buddies when we were getting into the thing, and I was running some seminars, you could call it, through that page on Facebook Live last winter. And I was sitting there looking at my schedule upcoming for this winter, and I went, "Boy, the first time I'm going to speak is going to be at the Chicago show. I better sign something up. I'm going to be speaking Spanish in front of all these guys with the nerves." So I kind of aligned that the way that I did so I could get some of those first speaking jitters out of the way and whatever. But it went great. It's always fun time talking muskies.
Awesome. Did you do a similar seminar to the one on Facebook or
I did more complex, to be honest.
nice.
I talked a lot about the same topics, but that one I definitely set up where it was kind of shorter and we could talk more after. I really wanted that to be more of a discussion with the people that were there and not the entire time just me talking. But
Hmm.
what I did was really just add in a bunch more on like bait specific, talking about retrieve triggers with a bunch of the different baits. And then just basically adding in videos that I've had from over the years that kind of went hand in hand with those retrieve triggers and both side stuff, and then just added it on top of all the bite window stuff that I had covered on that Facebook Live.
So Gus is doing his first public speaking engagement here coming up, doing a road rules, and then he's I think doing some sort of panel deal down in Milwaukee. You got any advice for him as another first time public speaker on the
Absolutely.
Muskie game? What would you say to him? I guess.
Well, I think for me, because I hated public speaking, number one. Like that when you sign up to be a guide and do all this shit, nobody tells you
Oh
that
yeah.
you got to be a public speaker. There was nowhere in the application that they had that
I
anywhere.
I didn't see
Um,
that either. So
uh-huh. But what I think, especially in any of like the classic seminars, like this show one was I'll say a little bit different. But like you get there beforehand and I really just like go around and like introduce myself to everybody. It helps calm you down, realize that you're talking to normal guys and stuff. And I always
mhm.
feel like I don't know why, but I always feel like I got to come out with some kind of joke. Like, I don't know if it's to get me
Oh
settled
jeez.
down or like to like get a read on the audience or whatnot. I don't know if I would suggest that or not, but try to find a
Uh,
way to become personable and like settle yourself in, whether it's making yourself look dumb or I don't know. That's the best way I got it.
yeah, that's good advice. I don't know if I'm gonna take the joke exactly for the initial. I would feel like there's a good chance like nobody laughs and I sit there and just go,
Yeah,
yeah,
I did that once and then it really kills you. Then you're like, oh
yeah.
boy.
I don't want to go. I don't want to start. I want to start at least at middle ground here at the beginning of the seminar. But
I was joking with somebody over the weekend. I try to get a read like like in high school or middle school, you always had that kid that would like talk too much and overshare or like was a goofball. Like
mhm,
I try to find them, like that person in the audience, because having the audience interaction, like whether it be ask questions or like comments or whatever, that helps me so much. But like
mhm.
For
if the
sure.
audience is just dry and like scared to ask questions or whatever, boy, I get nervous as can be if nobody wants to answer a question I asked or whatever. I'm like, so I feel like it's definitely repetition, like especially coming on a podcast. I hated this so much, but like you guys do it plenty. You'll be just fine. It's just talking muskies, but I always have to make myself look like an idiot or something right out of the gates to just kind of settle myself in.
I'll show like a lost fish video or something right from the get go. Don't do
Yep,
this. Yeah, I don't know.
yep, exactly.
Me just like losing my shit on the water or something like that.
It works. I've done it before, I swear. You want
No,
to see the
no
worst
way.
figure eight I've ever made on video? Here you go. Now we'll talk about real musky fishing. Yeah.
Hell yeah. So did you just use like PowerPoint on your computer and just input the videos in there so that you could just like tap and
Yep.
click during the
Yeah.
presentation?
Yeah, so I'd have them play in loop, and then I just add a blank screen and put a video because sometimes if I have it where it plays automatically, I haven't set myself up to talk about something beforehand and I've screwed myself. And then you try talking while the video's on, and you really realize that like when the video's on, people aren't listening to what you're saying, so it's not important. So like usually if there's a video, I try to say whatever I'm going to say for them to focus on or watch for, and then let the video play. Because doing both, there's just people just they don't pay attention to both at the same time. They're stuck watching the video or stuck listening to you. And they don't get the best of both worlds. So yeah, that would be a suggestion I would say. If you input video, definitely have it where you click in sequence and then say whatever you're going to say beforehand.
Cool. Yeah, that's definitely good advice. I probably would not have thought of that unless I went through the PowerPoint a few times or something. And hopefully
Hmm.
I'm able to do that because I will definitely want a little repetition. I think the one thing that I'm just to stay on this topic, the one thing I'm worried about is just time. Like I don't know if you had did you have like the amount of just slides and then minutes per slide, or
So
did you just kind of
so I've done probably like 20 around 20 seminars now between just like Muskies Inc. chapters and stuff. And I
Mhm.
went back and forth with like the time thing. So at one point, I started off with putting way too much information on the slides. And then, like in my rehearsal, it was like me wanting to say things a specific way. And
Mhm.
and then it just got to like too much almost rambling, or if I wanted to add on, it didn't set up well. Then I went the opposite way. Then I went with very little information on the slides. And then whenever I got nervous, I didn't have anything to really get back to. So I've kind of gotten myself where it's like anywhere from 25 to 30-ish slides is usually about an hour. Um,
Okay.
and like I really try to keep the bullet points to long enough that if I get nervous, I can spin around, read the next one, and just kind of keep things rolling. But definitely don't have too much information or feel like I'm forcing myself to say things certain ways. Like you realize that, and I had this discussion with Brad Hoppy over the weekend about just the industry itself. And like we're prosumers essentially. Like we know more than the vast majority of people. And even if we play things over in our head, like how we wanted to say certain things or discuss a certain topic, like they don't know that, right?
Mhm.
So you got to kind of cut yourself some slack in those areas and just give yourself the highlights. You go through it the way you're going to go through it in that time frame. And if you didn't hit every little piece of it that you were planning, it's not the end of the world. You're still sharing a bunch of quality information with these guys that they'll take away from it,
For sure.
whatever you
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for that. That makes me feel a lot better, and I'm gonna get going on that PowerPoint here shortly because I don't want to. That's the last thing I want to. Don't want to be rushing. I haven't really done quote unquote homework since
Yeah, I
college,
know. Yep.
so this is kind of goofy, but
I
I'm
will
looking
say
forward to it.
I will say my other thing for me is like I'm like I don't even know how to exactly say it, but basically we hold ourselves to a high standard, right? And like
Yeah.
whether it comes out as good as we think it did or not, like you'll still have guys that'll come up and say, "Hey, that was an awesome PowerPoint." So like if I started basically just feeling better and giving myself some slack on like you don't have to have this thing perfected before you go up there. Like get the
Yeah.
PowerPoint nice, have it organized, make it look clean, but like you're just talking muskies. We you guys do this a ton on the podcast. We do it all the time with our buddies on the water guide, and you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
it's easy. It's just it's you got to get yourself going and be comfortable, and that's why I always make myself look like an idiot.
So
You'll be golden.
Thank
I
you.
think
Thank you.
that Gus, I think you should have had a notepad out there, but I think that's all really sound advice.
Got him in my noggin.
You
Yeah.
got it in the noggin. Yeah, there you go. Um,
It works
so yeah,
sometimes.
let's circle back. I guess kind of start from the start here, if you will. Pre all these seminars and getting the guiding business rolling. Like, when did this all kind of start to click for you, as far as like when you made the jump from just being a guy to a guide? When did that happen? And, kind of when did you start to branch out? I mean, I think one of the things I'm really excited to talk to you about tonight is, some of the waters you fish in Wisconsin, just because it's, in our home state.
Hmm.
But I know that you do kind of, you diversify yourself. So what, give us kind of the setup on when things got rolling, where you started and kind of how it progressed, all of a sudden just saying, "Hey, I'm going to do this full time and be a guide."
Absolutely. You might have to remind me of a few points in that question, but I will say basically when things really got rolling for me, 2015 was like the first year that I fished muskies full time. So 2014, I had done some muskie fishing. I did a couple Canadian trips with my best friend. Their family, they always do fly-in Canadian trips, and then we did a week on Eagle, which that was awesome. And that was like probably on Eagle, that was like the first legit muskie experience. And we all did a day with a guide, and I think I went think I went 0 for 6 in the figure eight that day, and I was just pulling, but it was so cool. You know, the guide was probably losing his mind, you know, and I was just
Right.
like watching these fish, you know, level with the bucktail, chasing it in, eating it in the figure eight, and I was just like geeking out, you know. But that was probably my first real experience. And then come 2015, I had bought a 14-foot smoker craft little tin can off my uncle for like $50. And
And where are you at this time?
so at this point, let's see, 2015, I'm still in Illinois where I'm at right now. And so basically, like I said, 2015 was the first real year that I muskie fished, and the vast majority of it around home, Illinois, was on the fox chain. So that was like the first year that basically once school ended early May, that
Mhm.
we were going as much as we could. I think honestly at that time I don't even know what I was doing for a job, but I would say that we were probably going at least 4 days, 5 days a week. And I'll never
Nice.
forget it. We put like 73 muskies in the boat in that little tin can that year. But
Yeah.
between the Fox chain, and then
Hell
I
yeah.
grew up with a cabin in Wapaka, Wisconsin. I don't know if
Oh
you
yeah.
guys,
Yep.
yeah.
Our
Yep.
grandma and grandpa had a place there when we were growing up until we got our spot up in Eagle River, you know, probably 20 years ago. But when we were real little, we used to go to Alpaca, like
Yeah,
real little, and we'd catch
I love
bluegills and
that
stuff off
place.
the dock. It was awesome on the Alpaca chain.
Yep, and the only downfall of that place is it used to have muskies in it, and
Really?
of course I don't know. I wish I could remember what year we got it. I think I was maybe 12 or 13. I'm 28 now, so whatever that puts it at. But like I had caught plenty of bass, plenty of pike growing up, and during the signing of the cabin, I wanted to break 40-inch pike. Basically, was my goal at the time, and
Hmm.
I'll never forget my mom and dad were in the cabin signing the papers, and they look out and I'm fighting this pike, and I don't know, it was an upper 30s pike, but I was sitting there fishing off the dock. So basically, the way the things transformed was like from up there, I would have Shawano Lake. I always used to call it Shawano until my buddy I lived with in Wisconsin gave me shit. He's like, "It's not Shawano, you freaking Southerner," you know?
Yeah. I still
Um,
sometimes call it that
yep.
just for
So,
fun.
and God, that lake was a blast back in the day. So we fished that, and we fished the Wisconsin River. And then we were doing my group that I made Fish with Teeth Outdoors with. We would do the June trip every year. Starting in 2014, we'd do Lake Vermilion. So we'd go out of Vermilion Dam Lodge, basically be
Oh
like a
wow.
week after opener, and that was like kind of our muskie fishing for a while. Then when I graduated, which I actually gave, this was part of the seminar that I gave at Chicago, was talking about 2017. And it was cool because I have still in my notes page from my phone, it says like created January 20th, 2017 or whatever. And it's Luke Ronstrand's seminar, and it's all the highlight notes from the talk that he gave. And later that year, I graduated college. I had to do a capstone work thing, basically work in real life and do the final project on it. Well, I was lucky enough to I know the Tausk family who owns Vermilion Dam Lodge, and my plan originally was to own and operate a lodge, which I thought that would be a cool idea, but quickly I realized if I was gonna do it at the level that I would hold myself to do so, I wasn't gonna be able to fish much. So that
Right.
kind of went
Right.
out the window. But I worked there from August through the start of November, and I got to know guys like Luke and Bob Benson and Matt Seifert, and really fish, you know, with all these guys, and just learn from them hand to hand, meeting them, seeing them every day. So that was really cool. And then come 2018 is kind of the next real start to my fishing career. My parents and I had a agreement that if I graduated college, which I was really not, I mean, I barely went to class. I got really good grades, but like 0 out of hundreds on my attendance and shit. And the only reason I finished college was because my mom, you know, she said, you finish what you start. And I was like, okay, I'm basically doing it for her. I have no idea where my diploma is, but she's got it somewhere. So I made her happy, right? So the agreement was they'd buy me a boat for my college my college reward, basically.
That's
So they got me
awesome.
a 16.5-foot Lund tiller, which was awesome. And starting 2018 was the first full year where school basically didn't get in the way. I had spring and fall fishing all the way through. Long story short, to fast forward through these years, basically I moved up to Wisconsin, lived with good buddy Sam Stone in Wausau, Wisconsin. Got a job, just a job working at the local plant. Basically, it was 12-hour shifts. We worked 3 to 4 days a week, and we were both on the same schedule. And we literally just musky fished. Any day off, we would either be heading south for open season, or we'd be heading anywhere in Minnesota, northern Wisconsin. His family's had a place on the Minocqua chain for generations, so we would always go up there, and basically it was the beginning of real life, having nobody that was pointing you in the direction of what you needed to do next or how you needed to do it. And I was making plenty good money to basically afford just constant traveling when we weren't there. So
Yeah, you're just sustaining it.
yep. So it was
That's
it was
awesome.
pretty it was pretty damn cool. I mean, we both were absolutely muskie obsessed, and it was kind of the start of we're still mad at them, just like I need to go catch more and bigger fish of these things as much as I can. So that was kind of the start. So I mean, at that point and for all the way through 2020, I was located in actually, I don't even know when I moved back. It had to have been late 2020, but for little over 3 years, I was living in Wausau, and we were just traveling a bunch. I mean, we spent as much time as we could musky fishing, really targeting big fish. We didn't really fish too many of the numbers places in Wisconsin, so we were always hitting new big fish water up there. And then the second that we started going to Minnesota, it was like, well, drive an extra 45 minutes here in Metro Minnesota, and when you see 15 fish that are pushing the 50-inch mark a weekend, you're like, wow, I don't need to go back to northern Wisconsin if I don't have to. So then we
Kind of
started
ruins the
playing
ad a
around
little
over
bit.
there as much as we could. So yeah, that was kind of the whole thing. I don't know if there was any other parts of that question that I missed, but yeah.
No, I mean that was awesome. I did. Yeah, it got me reminiscing back. I don't know, Gus, if you remember the days when we were in Wapaka, on the little paddle boat throwing beetle spins for bass and
Yep.
pike and stuff like that. And
I remember.
um, anytime I talk, and I know Gus can relate to this, but anytime you talk to somebody who gets the musky bug, you kind of just can relate to them instantly because it's like the exact same shit. It starts out, you kind of get it, and then it goes from 0 to 100. It feels like real quick, and I think that's pretty awesome that you guys were just, essentially working to fish. You got
Yep.
a perfect job that you can pretty much cram in as many hours as possible, and then okay, hey, we got 3-4 days off, let's go take a trip. And that's a great way to do it. I guess I would be curious a little bit to hear about your time up at Vermilion. Gus and I got up there and fished the PMTT this last year, and that was our first time up there. And I got to be honest, I thought it was one of the cooler places I've ever been. Just
Absolutely.
absolutely fell in love with the body of water, the size of fish that were there. Like they just carry their weight in a different way, it feels like up there. Got to lay eyes on some beasts.
Oh
So,
yeah.
is there any particular days up there that you can recall that were just like, holy shit, this is just this is just ridiculous.
Vermilion is by far my favorite lake that I've ever been to, right? Like
Cool.
it was the first love of like real musky fishing.
Yeah, you never forget
Um,
your
and
first.
and like I said, like the group of guys that I was doing those high school trips with, and when we were first really getting into the sport that I made fish with teeth with, that was where we went. So like that, it was really like we were fishing around here, and then like that was our first real step into like, oh, that's what musky fishing is, right? Um,
Yeah.
so I mean, days wise that stick out, Vermilion's got my personal best still. But I will tell you, so in 2014, so like I said, we were going up there like the second week of opener, so like middle June, right? And I had always had it in my mind, and the way that the weather was kind of playing out was like, I want to say those Keys Outdoors episodes with Jason Hammernick, where they're hitting them during spawn on Mille Lacs. That
Yeah.
was like what I had kind of planned out in my head. Like, we're gonna go hit the spawning bays and we'll crush them, right? Well, for the entire 2014 season that we did it, I think we ended up with like maybe 2 30 inchers, lost a giant, but like we were kids from Chicago. This was our first real muskie fishing experience, and we would see like 10, 50 inchers a day, like in a bunch of other like big fish, right? Like big fish for us was like 45 was like that's a really big one. And it
Oh,
still is.
totally.
No
Yeah.
negatives against, whatever your real big fish you know, caliber or whatever is for anybody listening. But more or less, like we're like in these bays, like throwing a double cowgirl, and it's like opener, and these giant fish are like they're coming in lazy as can be. But it was impossible for us to really branch out and do anything different. Well, we got to meet Luke that year, and they were doing the open water thing, right? Like dead middle of the lake, throwing monster medusas, and we'd be hopping from bay to bay, and we'd be like driving by them in the middle of the lake, and we were like giving them shit, like in our heads, we're looking at each other going, "You couldn't pay me to go out in the middle and throw a monster medusa. That looks terrible." So we did that for like the whole first 2014 trip, right? 2015 comes around, we do our same plan. We still see them out in open water, and they're telling us like we got to try it. So for the first 3.5 days of our second trip, we had the same experience, caught a couple tiny ones, seen a bunch of fish, and finally we're like, what do we have to lose? Like, like we don't know what we're doing, but like let's just go try it, right? So we talked to Ed, we talked to Luke. They grab a few baits hanging on the Vermilion Dam wall, like um, kind of like the main area. There's a bunch of baits that they got hung up there. And so they hand us like a pounder double dog, a deuce, a couple other big rubber baits, and like we got like medium heavy rods, and like we got like
Uh-oh.
nothing set up, right? Well, long story short, we probably got to the head of lakes back then. We probably got there like right after sunrise, and by 11:30, we were already back in the cabin at VDL. Everybody with our PBs, we're already all hammered. We had no idea what we were doing,
What?
right? Like, and we're probably too young. I got to think back, but I mean, 11:30 in the morning, everybody's got their own new PBs. Like all we were doing was following around the next Cisco that would pop in the middle of the 40-foot basin. And that was like
Right.
how we tracked around the lake. And we were just
Wow.
throwing random baits, too heavy for our rods. And like it was just an insane morning, right? We
That's
finished that
cool.
trip. We ended up with like 11 fish, one over 50. I of course ended up with the smallest one out of all my buddies in that group. I ended up like 1 for 11 on the old Jimmy from Innovations. Thing has terrible hooking percentage, but every muskie seems to be using it. And it was kind of like the start of like the eye opener of like I need to like take the open water thing and go as many places as I possibly can. Like the amount of enormous fish we were contacting and seeing with wild, I had never thought about like or like I just never did it. And then it just kind of
Totally.
gave me the confidence throughout the rest of my career to basically try new things, get out of the box along those lines. But to finish the question on some days, the next coolest day was obviously catching a 54.5 in the figure eight off of Staley Island. That was pretty wild.
Jeez.
Um, and I mean, we've had a lot of wild days over the years. It was the first that when I worked there in 2017, it was the first time that I had ever fished it in the summer through fall, which was really cool. So we had always done our trips in the June timeframe, but there was one day in the late fall, it was negative 23 with the wind chill, and all we did was cast, and we had my 16 and a half foot
What?
Lund up there, and I'll never forget, the front side of the boat gets filled with baits, and I'm going through the neck down, and I can see these giant waves coming, and I go, guys, you're just gonna have to hold on. We can't slow down. And I
Yeah.
built this deck box, right? And both my buddies are sitting on the front, and the lid doesn't have a lock. And every time they would hit a wave, they would fly up, and I was just waiting for their fingers to get crushed under the lid And by the time they got
Ooh.
through all the waves, they had monster medusas and pounders and all these rubber baits hooked in their freaking. Oh, it was hilarious. It was so many good times up there.
That's unbelievable.
And I gotta add to this too, because the first day that we all had our PBs, Bud
Yeah,
Morgan. Well, the next day, my good buddy who actually we didn't all, three of us four had our PBs. The one kid didn't have one, our good buddy Brandon Jarva. And if you guys knew him, he's like the happiest go lucky human, like more happy for you than he would be happy for himself, right? So he got the most drunk that night, right?
sure.
Well, and he didn't even catch one. So we're awake at like 4:30 in the morning, and he's like, "Oh, just pick me up at noon." And we're like, "No, you're going." So we drag him onto the boat. We show up to Head of Lakes. It's still before 5 a.m. The trolling motor's not even in, and he's probably still half drunk, Grabs his rod with the reg dog, casts it out there, three pulls in. We just stopped in the middle of nowhere. We still have no idea what we're doing. Three pulls, got one. Trolling motor's not in. So then that was his PB, 46 and a half.
Oh
And it
my
was
God.
awesome. Yeah, so it was just like the beginning of the end. It was so fun. But yeah, that trip will be one that I will never forget.
That's awesome.
I still had my 16 and a half foot tiller when I was working there in 2017. It was kind of almost the beginning of like some real guide trips. Like I had taken, my dad out or buddies that don't fish and stuff like that. But there's a group, a father, wife, and then two sons that were about my age, staying at VDL, and they didn't plan on getting a guide, but they ended up, the kids wanted to do muskie fishing. And so Ed's like, "Hey, you want to take these two guys out, two kids out for a day?" And then, long story short, their parents were going to be a follow boat. So that was my first experience, number one, doing a guide trip with a follow boat. So that's almost, well, we'll add to it, right? So the follow boat thing, I quickly learned that because the parents didn't know how the spots were going to lay out, and usually, like, I would drive around past a spot to come back to one or whatever, however it laid out to fish the spot. Well, multiple times I was bringing them to like spot on the spots because it was like a good day. We were seeing lots of fish, so I was not really wasting time fishing through the entire sections. And multiple times the parents would, and no fault to them really, but they would stop and cut us off and be right on top of the spot on the spot, and because I did
Oh
like the
no.
long way around, and I'm just like, and honestly, it was probably, I like don't get pissed. I'm like not a person that really gets worked up whatsoever. But eventually, I was like, you guys are gonna have to tell your parents, like, follow us. Like you guys, like that was three spots and out of the last six that they just literally drove up on and probably burned. I'm losing my shit here, guys. But long story short, it was pretty quickly after I had just gotten my first beavers. And I don't know, have you guys been to Vermilion Dam Lodge or fished up in that little arm at all?
No, we didn't make it there. We stayed on the east side when
Okay.
we were
Yeah, see, like the
lodging
west
and
side for me is
fishing.
like, yeah, see, like the west side's like where I had spent most of my time just always going up there and staying out of VDL, which
Hmm.
the east side's fun to fish now that I've spent more time there.
Yeah.
But so our day's basically done. The one kid lost like a giant on this spinner bait that I had made up, like a 54 incher, and
Hmm.
they were kind of losing their steam. I knew it was gigantic, and I was like, "Oh my God, yeah." But they were kind of losing their steam, so we're making our way in, right? And finally, we get around the corner, and I go, "All right, we're gonna at least just hit this last spot in Dago Bay, which is just the bay, like two bays down from BDL. And there's one little like very obvious weed point that comes off of it. And I had just gotten beavers for like maybe a few days prior, the weekend prior from the fall outing, and I'm sitting there throwing a beaver for probably one of the first few times, and I'm the third bait through, and all of a sudden this absolutely enormous fish chases my beaver, and neither of them saw it, and I am shaking like a leaf back there.
Freaking
I'm
out.
like, guys, you guys, like, that was 56, 57 all day, right? So then this is on the first inside turn to this little weed point. I get past the weed point. Here comes another absolute moose just flying in on my beaver. And I'm like, should we hit it again? Like, we got to go. And they're like, they were done. And I'm like, well, shit, I'm going to drop you guys off. And like, I'm
Keep
going to come
going.
right
Oh,
back
yeah.
out. Like that, those were two enormous fish. Like the other one was probably 52, 53, right? So anyway, I dropped them off. I'm like driving back and I'm like, dude, if I catch this thing by myself, I don't even know how I'm going to take a picture, number one, but like this is going to be a shit show, just guaranteed.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I probably didn't even fish it right. I was so scared, like I was like, this
Oh,
is like, I
yeah.
didn't even know they make them this big. So I didn't catch it. I go in and I'm talking to Luke. I go, Luke, God, we saw two on that little weed point in Dago. I go, the thing was 57, I swear to God. And he goes, oh, it's 56 and 3/4. We caught it in June or in August on a beaver. I go, Jesus Christ. I go, well, at least, my upper 50, eye calculation was pretty damn good. But like,
Yeah, that's
like
solid.
he's like, yeah, she loves beavers. We got her in August, 56 and 3/4. I'm like, Jesus
Of
Christ.
course. Jeez.
You're not, I mean, you don't see fish that size very often, so it's like it's always hard to guess. And
I know.
I don't know if you tuned in at all about during our Vermilion kind of recap, but I can relate to like how you're saying, you almost go back and fish the spot and you're like nervous because
Mhm.
like we raised the giant fish pre-fishing, and we were on that spot early on day one, obviously trying to go back on that fish and catch it. And like I just remember, like, yeah, obviously, you fish in PMTTs, you have those jitters or whatever, but like fishing Vermilion was a whole different world of like nerves for
Yes.
a PMTT, because it's like, okay, yeah, obviously this fish is like meaningful just solely because of the tournament, but also I'm a northern Wisconsin guy. I don't get the chance to fish these types of waters with these beasts. So it's like it's not only like you're trying to catch a tournament fish, but it also might be your PB.
A
So it's like
million percent.
it's sitting there.
Mhm.
And so it's like I'm reeling in this bucktail and I'm like, why am I so fucking nervous? Like I'm
Yep.
literally like I got butterflies in my throat because I'm
Yep.
like at any second we know where this fish is sitting. Like it probably hadn't moved,
Mhm.
and yeah, so I totally get it. And
That brings me up the funniest story ever. So I'm on Green Bay, with my good buddy Dom Winnicky. He's caught plenty of big fish, like fished with me forever, right? And I think it was when I had blown a hub assembly. I was going he dropped me off at the dock. I went to go get it fixed, and we were running a GoPro, like looping whatever. And like a few days later, I download all the footage, right? And he was fishing that whole time that I was going to get the thing fixed. Well, I'm watching him throw this walk the dog, and it's like just flying in, like no chance at all for a fish to ever bite it. And he's sitting next to me as we're watching the video. He goes, dude, I was just so scared that I was gonna hook a giant by myself. And like he's musky fished a ton, but it's always like with me or my other buddy who musky fishes all the time. So he's never caught one solo. And he's like, dude, I was just imagining like hooking into a 53 by myself. And like, so it's like he didn't even give a fish a chance. He's like, I know, I was just frightened.
It's funny when you are messing with fish that are that big. It just adds like, because for us, like you catch a low to mid 40s and like that's a great fish for northern Wisconsin. Like
Hmm.
it still gets the nerves going. You're all jacked up, but like you get on a body of water like a Green Bay or Vermilion, and you're seeing these 50 plus inch freaking behemoths, and it's just like, yeah, it does a little something different to you. And
It turns men into children and guys into women.
Yeah.
Like it does. It really does. There's
Screeching.
oh
something
yeah,
different about those special waters that have those ridiculous sized fish that like that's that's really was my draw to Minnesota, like in general. Like we experienced
sure.
it pretty much right away with those trips back in the day, but I was always like just having the access to like those size classes of fish was like that was when I came home and musky fished, I was always just like that's what really got me going. Like that was the
Hmm.
adrenaline that I was chasing.
Yeah, I still think about the fish I lost on Vermilion during the PMTT to this day. I
Hmm.
mean, I have no idea how big it was, but I'll put the flag in the ground and say it was still the biggest fish I've ever seen. I don't, I you know, I don't want to
Oh,
rehash.
Vermilion's one of two places that I can say I've seen the biggest fish I've ever seen for sure.
Yeah, Yeah.
The other being
can't even
Eagle
talk about it.
probably, or another Minnesota
No, the
water.
other was in northwestern Minnesota.
Oh,
Oh,
Okay.
nice.
yeah,
Yeah.
DL area. And that one
Yep.
wasn't even behind a bait. That one was just sitting in a sand pocket in 4 feet of water. And I was like I didn't realize that was what I was fishing for. Like the head on it was like I literally had never seen a fish that big. And it was flat, calm, and sunny. And we were literally trolling motoring in to go because our batteries were dead. We were going in early morning. We had just night fished the whole time, and we were like going to go to the hotel, and we're going at like 1.1 miles an hour, just getting our way in. And all of a sudden, I'm like, dude, look at the. It was like a school bus. I was like, I like that's not what I picture in my mind while I'm casting, but like that,
Right.
I was like that. I've never seen a fish that big. It was
Yeah.
disgusting.
The boat
Well,
launch fish, boat launch
Yep.
beast. Always a
Yeah.
fish at a boat launch.
Always, always. I always neglect them too, but when I don't, it always seems like there's a giant right there.
yeah, always a resort muskie, always a boat launch muskie. Well, that's a good segue into kind of your guiding business because I would say that you're and I'm excited to hear more about it, but I would say you're guiding on if anyone's listening to this and wants to book a trip with you here for this upcoming season, like you're guiding on some big fish waters here in Wisconsin that you seem to kind of tap into. So do you feel, I guess you can kind of touch a little bit more on it, but do you feel like Geneva is kind of starting to kick out some of that potential with some of those big fish that we were kind of talking about with the Minnesota, Vermilion, Eagle Lake thing, where you're starting to see, kind of those top end fish like grow a little bit bigger than, we have up in Northwoods?
I would say yes and no. Yes, in the fact that it's growing a lot of big fish really fast, but they haven't made it to their potential yet. It's still on the young side of things in that category. So they started stocking it in 2010.
Okay.
Next
Oh
next year
wow.
class that they put in was 2012, and that class is like right in that 49 and a half to 50 range, and the first year class is like 51 and a half to 52 and a half.
What
Um,
strain are these fish that they're putting in there?
so the first 4 or 5 stockings, I want to say, were all the upper Chippewa, Wisconsin River
Holy shit.
strain, and then in 2018 they started adding in the Leech Lake strain, which
Oh,
the
wow.
we did catch one. We've caught a ton of Leech Lakers, which that's a pretty interesting topic alone. Like, which don't let me forget, I'll go back into that. But we caught a 46 and like a hair inch Leech Laker, very obvious Leech Laker, and that is like that perfect first year class guaranteed. We caught that, I want to say early to mid October, and that's that 5.5, 6 year old fish at 46 inches. And
Really?
I mean, yeah, and
Holy
I know
shit.
overall, like regardless of strain, the Wisconsin strain, the Leech Lake that they're putting in there, all of these fish are growing at a well above average growth rate in comparison to your average body of water.
Why
Um,
why do you think that is?
I, I I truly don't know. Like I wish I could put a finger on it. I just know that's what from a few of their nettings the stocking classes have shown, whether it be like the fin clips or whatever. But I mean the lake in general overall is like beyond healthy, has so much just like food for these fish. I mean, every species that gets caught out of there grows giant. It's uh it's just a beyond healthy fishery overall. So I mean, if if that has something to do with it, I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, it was at one point like top 2 or top 3 highest Cisco populations in the state. I don't know if that's true. I've heard people bring up that there's the Cisco populations have died off, and honestly, I've only fished it for that. Last year was my first full season ever fishing it. The year before, I started fishing it at the end of September. And before that, I only spent like 2 days ever on the fishery. So I don't have the year, like the real quality time spent out there that some people do from fishing other species, but I can tell you the health of the fishery is impressive. I will say though, the one thing that I noticed, say this past season for finally fishing it for a full year. The year before, the second spot I ever hit, we caught a 48. And then after that, of course, it seemed like finding those upper 40s really big fish for me was tough. We were catching fish every day, but a lot of like the upper 30-inch range, right? This
Hmm.
past year, I will say it is impressive as like as hell how quality the size ranges are. Really, like there's tons of fish in the upper 30s to be expected from the somewhat younger fishery itself, but there's a lot of big fish that are in there. It was reassuring to me basically because I had thought about starting to fish out there, in years prior and last or 2 years ago now, when I really did start to guide out there, was when I figured the stocking classes and the year classes were big enough in all ranges to make it worthwhile to guide, to not feel like I'm just going to go out there and catch a dink or have like one big fish opportunity for a week or something like that. But I will say this last year we caught a healthy number in the low 30s all the way through the upper 40s, and then we got 150, lost another for sure over 50, and I mean we saw another handful of fish that were in that 49 to 52-inch class that they're built like extraordinarily well. It's been refreshing for me having basically the Fox chain as the vast majority of my fishing that I do around here. But it's been fun. I'm a Clearwater guy through and through. I love Clearwater. I'm not a huge dark water guy. So the chain can get from time to time annoying for me. But the chain put out a bunch of giant fish this year. But Geneva's got a really exciting future. I've been saying it to everybody, but it will have 54s and 55s that come out of it. And I think the next, probably, I'll go on the higher end of things, but probably the next 8 years there's going to be some really impressive fish that come out of it.
Yeah, you're gonna get top end Wisconsin fish, and then in 8 years you'll have top end Leech Lake fish, and
I mean,
who
the
knows?
50 that I caught was a Wisconsin fish for sure, whether it was the first or second year class, whatever. But even if it was the first year class, that's a 13-year-old Wisconsin fish, healthy as can be at
That
50 inches.
seems
That's pretty solid growth rates, even if it's from the first year class.
that's wild. I don't know why or how that could be. Put some steroids in the water or something. I don't know, man, because
Well,
I mean it's just nuts.
I know overall, when you're stocking muskies as a new introduction to a fishery, those first few year classes always have like the super giant type of genetic possibility because they don't have the same competition. It's not like
Right.
they have the world in front of
Hmm.
Right.
them, to grow
Right.
big and grow fast. I think that like top end super fast growth rate will kind of even out as time goes on. I still think it'll be above average, but I mean, those first 3 to 4 year classes are just like skyrocketing. They're just turning into like super fish.
Jeez, are they because I really actually haven't looked into as much as I mean I've seen you fishing there and catching a whole bunch on social media, but are they stocking Geneva every other year? And how many per acre about are they doing?
I wish I want to say they're stocking it every year, but I could be wrong. They've kind of bounced around with at least the DNR stocking. I know like from 2018, 2017, 2018, 2019, they were doing every year, and that was also when they introduced the Leech Lake strain and stuff. I want to say that every year there's at least the like additional stocking for muskie clubs from Chicagoland. I think they do the vast majority of like the added stocking numbers, but I
Hmm.
I'm I can't confirm on the DNR being every year or every other year, but I want to say that they stock around 2,500 to 3,000, which it's a 5,000 acre lake.
Okay.
So it
That's
it
pretty
doesn't
good. That's
it
very
actually
good.
it still blows my mind that like when I go and I see 30 or 40 fish a day, it seems like there's zillions of fish in there, even with the vast acreage that they're
Yeah.
stocking it to. So it's been impressive. It still seems like it's got a lot of growth to go, don't get me wrong, but
Hmm.
like the number of mid 40 and upper 40-inch fish that we caught this year and like contacts with them, not just like randomly catch one every few weeks or whatever, like you see them. There's a lot of it just seems like the ones that they're stocking are doing really well, and like most of them are living, which is great to see. But they got a great food source, so
Sweet.
it's been fun. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, that will be a fishery that I think is on the list for us to just stop by to at least try once. But for all this talk on these large fish, and it seems like you have a magnet for them, you want to touch on at all how do you tackle the clear water? I guess is a for me not knowing anything really about Geneva, what clarity are we talking? Is it like heavy weed based, rock based? Are you doing open water stuff, night stuff? What's a good go to on getting these, fooling these giant fish in clear water?
So number one, Geneva is probably it varies, but I would say it's every day somewhere between 20 and 30 foot clarity. It's
Wow.
like a super clear lake. Like it's no joke
Jeez.
how clear it is. I
Wow.
think I think what kind of weighs in my favor in that fashion is like I've spent a lot of time on super clear lakes. Like if you go to Metro Minnesota now, Tonka, White Bear, like places that these like rusty crays have gotten in.
Hmm.
Um, and like I remember the last time I was on White Bear in Metro Minnesota, it was like the weeds grew out to like 29 feet and the clarity was like asinine,
Oh
and
my God.
and like to a degree there's time frames, and this goes with Geneva as well. Like there's time frames you basically are watching your bait like throughout the whole cast, and you're like, if there's a fish here, like I can see it. Like there's no
Hmm.
way, like so you can lose your confidence that way big time. And I think a lot of people that aren't used to clear water, they have a tendency to get too tight to the structure just because they're like, if there's one here, I could see it, type of scenario. But for me on Geneva, so much of it, especially big fish related, is just timing. Like, I mean, in clear water, these fish don't have to, like, they can see everything, right? Like you
Hmm.
can't sneak up on them. Like they can't sit right behind their food all day. They can't just follow around a Cisco school and like have the Cisco's be cool with it or whatever. But Geneva lays out a lot like a lot of the northern Wisconsin clear systems. It's got a lot of quality weeds, but it's got sandgrass. And
Hmm.
I'll never forget when I first really understood what sandgrass was way back in the day, fishing a couple of the northern Wisconsin lakes. I was like, this is disgusting. You get it like on a backlash, and your bait sinks to the bottom, and then you grow up a little bit or you get more experience, you realize how many of the fish really use sandgrass. And I
Hmm.
show
Crazy.
everybody that gets in my boat, especially once it grows in and everything, like how important 6 inches of shag carpet on the ground, like on the bottom can be. So I think when it comes down to it, like I'm fortunate of course, and so are you guys with time on the water, just really like I auto chart like a machine. I know
Hmm.
exactly. I overuse my waypoints. Like I
Yep.
wanna I wanna know how the spot lays out. And there's like one big area on Geneva that everybody fishes. It's called the flats. For good reason, really. I think it lays out similar to like majority of people's normal fishing. Basically, like it has weeds up shallow, it grows weed patches, further out. But there's there comes a time where you can only get away with half knowing things and having success, where like the clear water doesn't favor like your average angler as easily as say like a fox chain where the lakes are smaller. You can go to the break line, cast shallower, and come across fish. So really my suggestion is 20 feet is not like you're not deep. Like there's so many guys that get in my boat and we'll be in 41 casting bucktails and they'll be like I can't believe how deep we are. And I'm like, well, you got to remember, like these fish are not sitting on the bottom, number one, especially when they're active.
Yep.
Number two, like clearwater fish are, and I loved the way I learned this specific verbiage through Steve Herbeck. He talked about clearwater fish and dark water fish. Clearwater fish are like cheetahs. Like they can't sneak up on their food, so they're like speed oriented. When they feed from a long distance. They use speed to their advantage. They're top of the line predators, so like they fly and eat their bait, as opposed to dark water fish are more pumas. like sit in the trees, sit on an edge, and like wait for their food to come by and like pounce and eat them, right? So like
Mm-hmm.
clear water fish, when I'm fishing, I'm like really not, I'm not worried about, you know, I guess I don't know how where I'm exactly going with that, but really it's just a confidence in being
Mm-hmm.
as far away from whatever structure you're looking to really fish as possible. Long casts are huge to it. You got to
Yeah.
be committed to your figure eight as much as you think you can see everything. So many of the fish that we catch come out of absolutely nowhere at the boat, and you end up catching them in the second turn. The ones that usually are super high and chasing your bait in like a classic, you know, I don't know, fish chasing your bait in, those are the ones that
Mm-hmm.
actually I see turn off most times. Like even
Hmm.
if I'm flat out burning a
Huh.
bucktail and there's one just as high as that bait, like those are the ones that you just come in dead and they see your boat and go and turn off. Like those are the ones that I really don't catch as often as the ones that come straight vertical out of nowhere from under the boat. We're tracking that bait from a long distance and like the cheetah,
Yeah.
burbage just come out of nowhere and try to eat and you kind of convert them boat side. But a lot of it is just you got to be confident in having your boat in slightly deeper water and knowing that these fish move a long distance to feed. And if you can feel like you see everything, you probably can't. But it's just like any other fishery you fish. Like they're
Mm-hmm.
shallow in the start of the year as the weeds progress. Fish the best deep weeds as that sandgrass grew in and grew out. I'm really taking note of what depth or how that sandgrass edge kind of lays out, whether it's 6 inches tall or 4 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how many fish will just shoot up out of the sandgrass, come eat a bait that you would have never expected them to be there. And it's just like any others. I will also say I'll add in there that don't be afraid of the sun. I had way more good days in bright sun, no clouds at all out there than I had when it was completely cloudy, overcast, windy, like your classic musky conditions that you would think on a super clear water system would be good. I had way less good days during that than I did flat, calm, and sunny. I'm not afraid of the sun. I like the
Yeah.
fact that these fish can see a bait from further away. It seems like you get more action on those sunny days. So I am not afraid of it, and I'm also used to the boat traffic as well. So boat traffic doesn't bother me. I know going up by you guys or going to Minnesota, it's nice to get away from some of the boat traffic, but I can tell you
Mm-hmm.
they live in it every day. They're used to it, and most of the time they actually use it to their advantage. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
No, I I know I think Gus has a question for you, but I just wanted to I guess mine's not so much of a question. You mentioned you don't know where you're going with that, but I thought you did a great job at painting the picture because as guys that don't fish clear water as much, we've started to kind of get into it. I know Gus a lot more than I have and some of his exploratory stuff, but when you're talking about the difference between like a cheetah chase and a puma, I think it paints a really good picture because it's like when Gus and I sometimes will get into a certain lake where we know, I'll say like it feels like we're almost combat fishing because
Mhm,
like we're up in the shit. You're trying to make super precise casts at certain structure that is there, whether it's visible above the water, you just know from experience that it's below the water. And you're talking about these fish like chasing down baits from 20 plus feet away. Like that doesn't happen on some of the dirtier systems that we fish.
mhm,
So like I love the fact that you're just like you gotta have confidence in it because you really do. Like you're talking about throwing a bucktail, your depth finder saying you're sitting in 41 feet of water. I mean, that sounds asinine to a
mhm,
guy that's used to fishing, 3 to call it 6 feet, on whether it's a cabbage edge or, laid
mhm.
down timber or whatever. It's just a whole different sport. So I guess I just wanted to touch on that. I thought you did a good job at painting that picture because I kind of started to visualize like, man, okay, so if you're rolling a bucktail, whether it's a bigger model or whatever, you're throwing a grenade and you're zipping it in, like you could see a fish in clear water coming. They're not ambushing it per se, but they're just tracking it down from a long distance. And
Mhm.
that might be like you're saying your better hookup percentages. Gus, I don't know if you had a question there. But
Uh,
yeah, that's all
I
I kind of
mean,
wanted to say.
multiple, honestly, because I'm just diving into some clear water up here. tapping into some clear lakes that don't have weeds, some clear lakes that have sandgrass, some clear lakes that have, what is it?
Milfoil.
Milfoil. Yeah, milfoil, coontail, sometimes cabbage. Really not much cabbage in a lot of the clear lake scenarios, but yeah, I've seen that in the few times those fish in clear water act a little different. They like a lot of times, Max, you've seen it too. Like that's where we get those follows that happen after our first or second term, where then they show up and you're like, they must be coming in from stupid distances away. And so mainly as we grew up fishing the Eagle River chain, so dirty water, and that's honestly where we started to branch out to is continue to fish dirty water. Uh, I always fish slow. Do you like to fish pretty fast through spots, or since you know Geneva well, do you break it down pretty like precisely? I definitely got more to touch on that too. I was going to ask something about when you say you're backing off structure. If say you don't cast on the crest of that spot, the shallowest spot, will you do a second pass shallower sometimes? Or I know I just
Yeah,
asked two questions there, but
no, that's good. So I will say that on both sides of the spectrum there, like in clear water, I and like overall, I've always been a person that seems to move the boat as fast as I possibly can, fish my baits quicker. But over the years, I've definitely learned like on your darker systems, fishing the Wisconsin River, fishing basically the even the Fox chain, you can say. When they don't have that capability of realizing where your bait is or seeing it or feeling it, you have to slow things down for sure. Now, I will say in the clear water, it's nice because I can always waver whether I'm reeling my baits or working my baits super fast or not. I can always waver on moving through with the boat quicker. Now, I will say I've gotten better, and it's probably more so associated with guiding itself. Like, I, if I go out for myself, I'm gonna move through things super quick. Just like it's just the way I like to fish. But not everybody has the capability of whether it just be skill wise or really anything, but just moving through spots as fast as I once did. I've slowed things down. So I mean, on average, I'll say I work through a spot about 0.7, right?
okay,
And
yeah.
in clear water, I always waver towards being able to work faster. You don't have to make your casts as tight because, like I said, the way these fish hunt, the way these fish react, when they're active, they're automatically going to have to move a far distance to engage on their food. So you can
Hmm.
kind of cheat the system there. I will say that whenever I'm fishing denser cover. So whether like they're really stuck in the 20-foot sandgrass or they're in the best deep milfoil and cabbage in the 17-foot zone, I'll slow things down big time. And I think I really learned that from Matt Seaford. He was like, I was always accustomed to fishing blades super quick over thick cover, whether it be like just to bring it above the cover or whatever. But when he really like opened my mind to the fact that like sound and vibration and your visual like the visual window that these fish can see when they're sitting in that super thick weed cover is like not that big, right? So the thicker the cover, the slower I'll fish through it. Make sure you take as
Hmm.
many casts as you possibly can, shorter distance, like width-wise between casts, and you're really making your presence known. Because even in the guiding aspect, before I really made it a point to kind of slow down when fishing thick weed cover. It seemed like the second or third bait was always the baits that had the action, when in
Hmm.
reality it should have been the first. But half the time the first bait, whether it be the noise or the vibration from the bait, just kind of woke the fish up and pulled them out of their spot. And then the
Hmm.
second or third bait was the one that they actually got to visually see and cue in on and make that kind of engage with the bait. So in terms of how quick, like I said, it's about my average, the 0.6, 0.7. The second you get going too much faster, it just seems like the quality of the casts aren't that great from the vast majority of people. But
Hmm.
if I can get away with it, if it's not as thick cover, if I'm fishing shallow sand, shallow rock, shallow wood, I'll crank through as fast as I can just to kind of cover it. But what was the second part?
Well,
Uh,
the second part is go ahead, Gus. If you're, I mean, I guess I just want to touch
If you
on it a
got
little bit
anything on
because
that,
it's
go for it.
go for it.
well, yeah. So what you said is interesting, and I think what Gus is kind of alluding to is something that I think I kind of want to flush out a little bit right now because I feel like it was just kind of a natural progression that I saw from Gus as he spent more time on the water, of like slowing down and repeating spots. And I remember distinctly, like, when we were growing up, like we would have, okay, we'd have 2 hours to go musky fish, and it would just be like, all right, we're gonna go hit, this bar, then we're gonna go hit this point, then we're gonna go hit this shoreline, and then if we don't see anything, or maybe if we see one, we're done. And if we catch one, great. If we don't, whatever. And then as like Gus kind of kept staying on the water and like really honing his craft, we'll go to a certain lake and it's like we'll just only hit a certain kind of stretch, and like we'll
Yep,
just do it 3, 4, 5 times. And like
absolutely.
when we started doing that stuff, it took me a little bit to like comprehend what we were doing. And like I didn't start to realize that how effective it was until like, we'd go through it once, maybe we wouldn't see one, maybe we would. We'd circle back, go through it again. All of a sudden, you're seeing a different fish, or we'd hook up. It's like, well, where the hell was that one? And whether it was bite window oriented or just the fact that you either had an angle change or a bait change, like that made all the difference. And that's when it started to click for me. Like, okay, a lot of these fish will start to kind of pack up, on certain days, and like doing that same stretch two, three,
Mm-hmm.
4 times like becomes extremely effective. Not only just picking out the one fish maybe you saw in the first pass, but like getting other ones to move and stuff like that. So I think the second part of the question was like, are you, fishing these same spots multiple times, angle changes, depth changes, stuff like that?
Yep, I completely agree with that because I can guarantee you when I first started musky fishing, like when we found fish, we would just take that pass over and over. And then like kind of in the middle stretch of my career of musky fishing, it was like it seemed tough to go back and fish the same stretch for whatever reason. It was always like new spot, let's find that new fish, da 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 da
Yeah. It's
da.
like, oh, that one's
But
not biting. So let's just,
yeah,
leave it. Or,
Yeah.
exactly.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
I, I can say we're a little fortunate with how often we're able to be on the water and kind of dial in where these fish are located. That without a
Mm-hmm.
doubt, I will say there are the time frames that like we're gonna go, especially like this fall. Like there was 3 spots that I had a lot of fish on, and it was like, well, like our game plan is literally we're gonna just cycle through these 3 spots, right? And we're gonna attempt to plan or time which spot for that day is it seems to be like responding best. We're going to try to time that out best for what our planned for windows would be, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I would say that yeah, I definitely go through spots a lot. I mean, there's time frames and I see it more on Geneva than I would say like the chain, for example. It's just it's a different it's a little bit of a bigger system. So fish I think move around a little bit more, but like once you have your few packs of fish or the fish, the weeds are really growing in there, so there's a pack of fish there. Like if you ever see one fish, you know there's 5 there. You see 5, you know
Yeah.
there's 15.
Yeah.
And sometimes it might be even like there's one fish there right now, and like maybe there's not 5 more there right now, but like when the
Mm-hmm.
window's open, that's where they're sliding to, type of thing. Like
Yeah.
that's the spot that they're
100%.
feeding off of. And that I've seen a lot, and especially even on smaller systems. Like the smaller the system, I feel like the more timing related you have to be when you're hitting the spots. And the best thing you can do is just keep hitting the spot over and over because you're going to be there when the window opens, right? So like having
Yeah.
that, like you can always fish your way into like oblivion if you try too many different things or like you're you like how this is something I always say. Like let's say it's midsummer, it's a very classic time frame, and you fish through your 3 best spots and you didn't see anything. So now you go exploring. You try different places, different baits. And you just keep doing it, right? Well, you
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
might be doing something completely wrong, but I always advise trying new things and doing things that are different, right? But you
Mm-hmm.
might be fishing yourself way away from the pattern, and it was just simply a timing thing. So like
Yeah.
going back to what you started with on the spots you started with might be the bite, but you got to remember that like it can be as simple as timing. We know these fish don't eat all day every day. We know that like a lot of times, especially nowadays, you get on more pressured water. You got to be there when they're biting, doing the correct thing during that
Mm-hmm.
time frame. Otherwise, you're
Right.
basically trying something when you shouldn't be. And that's the tough thing within the game. It's the game within the game. It's the fun part for
That's
me.
the
Like I really
mind.
enjoy.
Yeah, that's
I
the
love
fun
that.
mind games with
Yep.
yourself.
And I know there's many days I get off the water and like maybe we went and tried some things and then we got back and we caught like the back end of the window. I could tell like we had a chance and then we saw a couple lazy fish and it was like shit, I we might have played around for too long. But if you don't play
Mm-hmm.
around, you never find that next thing or the next wave of fish that moved up to this or the next, bait category or presentation that really then gives you another random 4 to 6 fish day that you wouldn't have had if you didn't try it. So it's the game within the game there for sure. But yeah, I will say that there's always I once you get on the water a few days in a row and a week and time goes on, I have my kind of guarantee fish on that spot somewhere and I'll revisit them throughout the day in the windows. But no
Mm-hmm.
matter what throughout the day, I'm continuing to add in a different presentation or fishing a spot from a different angle or trying and checking
Yeah.
out a spot or two on the way to another one, even if it's 5, 10 minutes or a drive by with side imaging, whatever it may be. But you gotta add that stuff in. But it's the game within the game. You gotta be careful on both sides, but can never go wrong fishing where you just saw a fish.
Yeah. You can
Uh,
get you can get trapped into fishing too many spots just as much as I've personally been more times than not trapped into fishing too few spots and being too stubborn. I'd say that's what I have a flaw in myself, but it lends into some decent days, finding fish on a
Absolutely.
spot that I damn near spot lock on for 20 minutes. Um, but I know you probably have the benefit of also like, running through multiple baits. I was gonna ask you how important is are blades incorporated into your game on a year like day in and out basis, June through or I guess May in Geneva through end of the season? Is blades every day, all
Yep.
season or
April through December. There's at least a blade running for at least some time frame. I'm fortunate again to have Northern Illinois, so not a closed season. I can fish it year round. Most of the
Mhm.
time I start personally in that like late March time frame, but I start guiding the 1st of April usually.
Okay.
And I can tell you this last year was by far the best blade year that I have ever had in my entire life. What I can
Same for me.
account it to, I'm not entirely sure, but I will say that this last year was eye-opening to me how many different situations, how many different circumstances, moods of fish, etc., that having a fish simply engage on a blade, come to the boat, and be converted boat side because of how quality blades are at their boat side convertibility, basically.
Hmm.
Yeah.
How productive that can be day in and day out, whether the fish are going crazy or they're not. And for me, especially on the Geneva side of things, the addition of the grenade has been it's probably my favorite bait. It's just been a blast. It's so fun to fish, adding in the vertical aspect of a bucktail. And really, when it first came out, the vast majority of it for me was using it in open water scenarios. Nowadays, it's
Hmm.
like a for a third bait through, or even just a first bait through, you're fishing a steeper edge or weeds that are topping off at 10 to 15 feet deep. It's like this is a perfect you know addition to the arsenal basically that fits a role that you really haven't been able to use blades in. But yeah, blades for me have been huge. Really, this year was pretty wild. I'll be honest. I bet you we caught over 70% of the fish we caught all year on blades. Like I said, we caught them
Oh
from
wow.
April all the way through December. A vast
Man.
majority of the success was really just playing with speeds and size range. Some days they wanted it super slow, some days they wanted it super fast, some days they wanted it fast, super deep, some days they wanted it super fast, super high in the column. I'm always an advocate for like, let's say I got two guys in front of me, we're all running through spots, right? And I go, this is how I want you to throw the bait for one or 4 out of every 5 casts, but make sure 1 out of every 5 casts you do the exact opposite, whether it be their staple or their baseline is a super fast retrieve. I'll say make sure you add in 1 out of every 5 casts that's just a super slow rolled bait in, and remember that you're doing it too, because it's amazing
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
often that 1 out of every 5 casts gets the action, and when you really try to comprehend that in terms of like numbers, like the odds of that cast being the one that gets the action is obviously a heck of a lot lower, but it's also like, all right, we something's changed, or the whole boat needs to make that change, because
Hmm.
it's amazing how that 1 out of every however many casts it is the one that kind of reorganizes the game plan. So it's a lot for me this year was just the confidence to go slow roll a blade. It's so boring. It's beyond me. That was never how I really liked fishing blades. I was always burn and turn. But I can
Yeah.
tell you the slow roll for me was like it was so fun. I hate doing it every time. I got so bored. I'm
I
like, I'm
don't
gonna
like it
quit
either.
doing.
Trust me.
Yep, I'll just hand me a rubber bait. Let me rip it and go to town and trigger some fish. But let me tell you, it was like even December. I'm sitting out there like your shit's freezing up on a slow roll, and it's like here comes the supermodel barely spinning, and oh, there's a fish behind it. Hang it and have it eat. And I don't know. It was a fun year. So yeah, blades for me is big time. Um, it's amazing just any adjustment. Like for me again, the slow roll, but like adding weight to baits. Like I said, the addition of the grenade, um, the confidence to throw blades over 40, 50, 70 feet of water. Something that most guys, whether that's why I'm having success because most guys aren't doing it, or whether
Yeah.
you just start to realize that blades work from March through December just because you're using it. I don't know, but yeah, they were a huge piece to my success this year, without a doubt.
God, a lot to touch on there.
Yeah.
That's why you're a pro though. You kind of got ahead of my next few questions. Honestly, just like every time you kept talking, I'm like, oh, he just answered another question. Oh, he's because
Well, good.
I
Hey, I'll
was
take it.
Oh yeah.
yeah. I mean, I guess I was curious. Obviously, outside of the grenade, is there any certain models of blades that you found more successful than others? This year, I loved real quick. I loved when you said like, you know, blades working, especially in late season. Do they work because you're just throwing them more? I mean, we went out and fished in December, and I threw on a bucktail that day because I was like, I want to say that I caught a fish on a blade in December on a bucktail because like
Yep.
all you hear about is throwing either a big glider, big rubber, or whatever, late in the fall, and it's kind of the textbook. You pull up an article online saying what should I throw in the fall, and
Yep.
everyone's going to tell you, throw a big rubber, throw big glides, whatever. But at the same breath, like, okay, well, no one really else is throwing big blades at that time. Sounds like it was successful for you. So outside the grenade, what else did you find success on blade wise? Anything unique, blade combination, size, anything in particular?
So all the way back though to when we finally forced ourselves into fishing open water back in Vermilion with the Luke example, driving by them and kind of making
Sure.
fun of them. That literally just continued to spur the whatever everybody's doing, or whenever I Google what I should be doing the opposite. For all the years trying that, there was a lot of wasted time, don't get me wrong, but you come across a lot of success, and just it comes with having the time to try the new stuff and having the confidence that if everybody's doing something, I really do want to try. Like I want to make an
Hmm.
attempt to be doing something differently. Today's day and
Does that
age of
sound familiar,
social.
Gus? Does that sound
Yeah.
familiar at all?
Yeah,
Yep.
big time. That's all I
So
do
I
out
mean,
here on the chain.
that's the way to do it. I mean,
Oh
it
yeah.
literally is. And time and time again, the more success that I have with it, the more I get confident, and like, especially guiding, it's like, I don't want to waste these guys' time, but like, we got to go try this. Like, and they have the confidence within you. But blade wise, again, this year we caught the most fish blade wise on a trigger. I don't know what it is about a trigger. Since
Yeah. Us
since the
too.
release of the trigger,
They're
literally, so the
great.
first year you guys throw triggers at all up there?
All the time.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Got a bunch of them.
Just
I even made a few myself that are like
yeah.
little switches in it, you know.
Yep, you got to play with it. But
Yeah.
the first year the trigger was released, every single bucktail fish throughout the whole season that I guided on the Fox chain, every single bucktail fish was on a trigger, and they were like
That's
I always
unbelievable.
talk about this, but you when you catch a fish, you got to be aware of how the muskie eats your bait. Like it tells a lot. Like if it just nipped it, whatever. And in terms of bucktail fishing, when they eat the whole bucktail, you know you've got something, right? Like beyond the years way back, which I wasn't a part of like the cowgirl era, but like
Hmm.
when they eat the whole bucktail, like you know you've hit the spot, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the trigger was huge for me. Even after dark, the triggers caught so many bucktail fish for me, and it just doesn't seem like it fits that role like a big blade after dark or whatever. But
Yeah,
I
it's
can
just a
tell you,
single skirt.
yeah, a trigger. I've dug so many triggers out of the bottom of their mouths that I'm just like, it's a staple. After dark, if we're throwing blades at all, it's guaranteed to be on. But
Do
the
you toss a
trigger,
front hook on the trigger at all, or you just run
heck
them
no,
just the back?
heck
Okay, yeah,
no.
I just run the back as well.
The only thing when I've reshafted a few and made some with different weighting. I've made some with
Yeah.
two skirts. I don't even know if I've put a middle hook on them. I want to say I haven't, but the trigger, the 10-9 was super good this year. Um, and then the detonator. The detonator's been phenomenal for me, and I think the detonator. I think anytime you go to a really big blade bait, and it's really any big bait in general. I always say like you can almost, if you fish a really large bait too aggressive, I think you're gonna kind of exclude yourself from the smaller fish. Like you can never throw a big enough bait. We all know that nowadays for like a 30-inch fish, say. But I
Hmm.
think the second that you start really moving a large bait aggressively, I think it does kind of lower your odds of those smaller fish making a move on it. So for me, when I go to a detonator, and this is all semi-relative, but I will say the detonator and a supermodel, like the vast majority of my retrieves are like pretty plain Jane. Like I'm just offering a giant meal, super easy. And the one special thing that I think I like about the detonator is the fact that like we know the recent trends in hype around staggered blade baits and different size this and that. And the coolest part about the detonator to me is the fact that the 13 blade, the supermodel blade, is exclusive to Muskie Mayhem. So there's no other companies or whatever that can make a stagger blade bait with that supermodel blade.
Hmm.
And I think I think to some degree, I think that's why it's been just like lights out for me. That's been one of the other staples after dark for me. And it just seems like when you fish enough years for these fish and you have these fish that just seem like they've unplugged their brain next to the boat, like you can't do anything wrong. They just go ape shit, for certain baits. That's one of the baits that I can certainly toss in that category of like these fish when they want that bait, like you can do zero, you can do no wrong. They just seem like they come unglued. So
I got
that's
a
been
I got a quick trigger story, and then I'll let Gus riff because I know I'm sure he's got a few questions. And yeah, the detonator, we've picked up those. Those are awesome. Moved a nice fish in Vermilion actually on the detonator, and I love the way those things look. But a funny trigger story. We've picked up a few listeners since I told this back in early summer, but we were night fishing, and I threw on a trigger, and same deal. I was like, all I've heard is, maybe big baits that push water. And for whatever reason, though, we had been catching fish on the trigger during the day. So I was like, whatever, I'm just going to throw this thing on and see what happens. And it was like our first spot. It was new moon. So it was blacker than black outside. I had no clue what was going on. There's a shit ton of bugs everywhere. I'm kind of annoyed. It started to rain, not even like paying attention. And we pull up on this spot and like few cranks. Well, I actually that wasn't the case. It was like I'm not really thinking. You know how like when you're night fishing, you start kind of thinking about other shit. You throw the bait out and like you just kind of lose where you're at.
Yep.
And so I'm reeling this bait in, and all of a sudden just get absolutely walloped. And I was so out of my mind when this fish hit. It hit so hard. I didn't know where I was in my retrieve, and I heard it, but it was, again, bugs are going on. There's a light rain, and I heard the fish for whatever reason, I thought the fish was like boat side. And so I, put my rod down to the left and I try to swing back to the right. Like I think the fish is only like 3, 4, 5 feet away from the boat.
Mhm.
And as I swing the bait back to the right, everything just goes completely slack. And I was like, oh, what the fuck? And I'm like, what's going on? And I'm like, I start reeling up my slack. I'm like, I think he just broke me. Oh, nope, still have him. And he was like 40 feet out.
Yep.
And it choked the bait so bad that like when the muskie got up and we had our headlamps on at that point in time during the fight, I couldn't even see it. Like it just all saw was line and mouth.
Yep.
And lucky enough, like when we got the fish in the net, it was a nice fish, and we get into the net and we pry its mouth open. That trigger was so far down. Lucky enough, the hooks were completely exposed, so we were able to just clip them, and fish was totally fine. But like you're talking about how fish eat bucktails, like that was like crazy to me. And I'm like, okay, this bait works, because like it was just one of those things that you couldn't even see the thing. It was so far down the muskie's mouth. I was just
I literally
shocked.
bought a second pair of Nipex the year that the trigger came out, because I was worried that like if I for some reason dropped the Nipex in the water or whatever, that like I was gonna need those 1,000,000% in the boat to unhook the fish that were biting that thing. Because
Yeah.
they were like literally gone.
It was completely, I mean, and the hit was just violent too. Like I
Yeah.
mean, that thing wanted to just murder this bucktail.
Hmm.
And I mean, the fact that it stayed hooked after I literally had it completely slacklined for, probably 5 or 6 seconds, like not even thinking I had a bait at that point. I thought it just broke. I mean, I had no feeling of where I was at during the cast or whatever. And that's just a whole night fishing escapade thing. But
That's the best. Yep.
it was hilarious. See, I'm like, it was a miracle that I got that fish in. And then when we got it in the net, I'm like, it was not a miracle. That fish wasn't going anywhere. I mean,
Yeah.
Well, if you guys don't have something important to go on to next, I got a quick grenade story, which is hilarious.
go for it,
Go
man.
for it.
So we're fishing this little stretch, and I had basically just gotten back from my Minnesota stretch, and I had told this guy like the bite window's basically at 8 p.m. Like we're gonna go find some more fish, and then we'll set up for it, right? So we're halfway through the spot, and this fish surfaces right, like kind of behind the boat, right on the spot, and usually that's like a damn, we didn't have the right baits on going through the spot, and that fish probably just ate. So I'm like, oh
Mhm.
shit. So I'm like, all right. So I turn the boat, I go cast over that fish, and he's throwing a grenade, right? So he's bringing his bait in, and it's hung up on itself sideways. So he picks the bait up out of the water and he's fixing it. And I watch this fish come up right next to the boat, and he sticks his nose out of the water, and he's looking at us like, where did my food just go? And the guy, the kid that was throwing the bait didn't see it happening. I'm like, oh shit. Like he's right there, like fix your bait and put it back in the water, right? So the fish kind of puts his nose back down. He's slowly swimming back down, and he gets the bait unhooked. He sets it in the water, right? And the fish hears it get set back in the water, and he flips back vertical, and two tail cooks just inhales the whole grenade. And 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 I'm just like, that was the dumbest, like that's the things that like I'm not lucky as a musky fisherman. I really like I have to work for every, but like once you start guiding, you see you just
Crazy
have
shit.
like hilarious stories. Like Greg has told zillions of hilarious stories.
Yeah.
He's amazing as it is, but like you just see things in every spectrum, right? And I'm like, dude, that was like the wildest shit. I've like the fish literally looked at us with its head out of the water, like, and then went back down, and then like he set it back in there, and it just like walloped it, just completely inhaled it. And we
Oh my
set the hook
God.
and get it in the net, and it was the kid's PB and his first figure eight. It might have been his first casting fish. I don't think he'd done too much casting before that.
Wow.
And I was just like, that was the craziest shit ever. Like that would have never happened to me, but I'm
Mhm.
so glad it happened. And it was some of the coolest pictures ever. It was like pristine sunset and
Oh,
everything. I was like,
it's the
that
best.
was one of those that I'll tell a million times, and he'll remember forever, and I will too. It was hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's
Oh, that's
awesome.
awesome.
Yep.
What with the grenade, let's touch on that, because Max and I, we got one for this season. We're excited to use them. Unfortunately, probably the one fish we could have caught with it pulled the bait out of its mouth. It was pre-fishing for Madison, but
Hmm.
we used it a good bit. We want to use it more, but for some tips on it, is it mainly like a countdown straight retrieve if you're fishing deep? Because I know you said you like to fish it shallow too. Or are you doing any like, can you yo-yo it? Like how can you work it? Can you work it in different ways?
So the grenade for me is kind of one of those bait categories, and I like for whatever reason I associate the beaver in this category as well because it's like it's a new bait that I think everybody really like it's obviously productive, right? But it's one of those baits that people buy and they throw for like 5 casts when they're getting bored and then they go back to whatever. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's personally one of those baits that you got to go give like an hour and go play with it because it's beyond extremely versatile. Um, and you can kind of start to realize how many different situations and structures and like whatever you'd really be able to use it in. I would say for me, the vast majority of the time that I'm throwing it is like a combination of how you would throw a bucktail slash maybe even like a swim bait, right? Like in open water scenarios, I'm certainly yo-yoing it back. I throw it out, count it down 5 to 10, reel it in, or just straight like sweep it upward, count it back down, sweep it upward.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Um, and but I would say like my average retrieve with it would be working over any type of quote unquote deeper structure. Um, cast it out, count it down a few, or even just start retrieving it right out of the gates. Make sure that thing's getting down to depth because fish only see bucktails in the top 5 feet vast majority of the time, right? So I'm attempting to fish it in that 5 to 10 vast majority of the time. And then I'm just playing with speed, just burning it, killing it, letting that thing work just as it's designed on the sink. I
Mm-hmm.
add in probably 2, 3 times throughout a retrieve where I speed it up quick, few cranks of the reel, whatever, big sweep, whatever it may be, and kill it.
Hmm.
And it's a super fun bait. Like I said, it's really one of those baits that you got to go out and play with.
Yeah.
But there's so many different situations that it is relatively weedless, surprisingly. I won't say that I've used it like a ton throwing through shallow weeds, but I can
Okay.
tell you like Madison chain, for example, is one of those fisheries that when the weeds grow in, they grow in super thick to X depth, and then there's just
Mhm.
a wall, right?
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
that's a bait that you can chuck up on top, burn it over the top, and you get to that edge of the weeds, and you can just kill it, and it just drops perfectly vertical down that structure edge, and then finish up with your retrieve into the figure eight. It adds a whole different dimension that, and I
Mm-hmm.
hate talking about it really a ton because I always feel like I'm an infomercial, but like it's a fun bait to fish. It just adds in. It's kind of like I don't know how much you guys have used like Kramer Brothers Revo, the Revolution blades.
Not a bunch. I got
Like it's like
one,
the
but
peanut blade, but like that's
yeah.
another one of those that like when that came out years ago, like it doesn't exactly sink, but it like comes in deeper and you can just you have a bunch of fun, basically variety of ways to fish a bucktail style bait. So I I'm using the grenade a lot in open water. I think just having a bucktail added to the open water arsenal has been phenomenal, and you catch almost every fish that bites it because it's built on wire and flash buoy and hooks, as
Right.
opposed to,
Thick
like you
rubber.
get somebody who's not as strong on a hook set in your boat, and it's like, sure, they might be able to get bit on a Medusa or a bulldog or whatever you're throwing, but the amount of times they're going to be able to keep hooks in that fish might not be great. So that's a
Right.
great time frame for adding a grenade. But yeah, I love it. It's just so fun to fish, and especially when you're talking clear water. I think if you can get a bait that's coming up at like a 45-degree angle into your first turn type of deal, I think it seems like it creates a lot more of those bites that if you were to throw a normal blade or have that thing coming in 2, 3 feet deep and it doesn't really change depth as you're going into that first turn, first
Yeah.
real opportunity for them to bite. It's just a blast to fish.
This I completely agree when you said you kind of put it into the category of a swim bait. And this is opening my eyes on I was too stubborn and just kind of didn't shy away from the swim bait. In like September, I did really well on a swimming dog. And that is like to a T how I fish it. Like if I cast it up shallow, I'm burning the shit out of it until I reach that point where it's deeper. I kill it. And then I do yo-yoing with it. And then it always comes up nice and, somewhat deep at a 45. And a lot of fish would just crush it as it's coming up, like just into visibility. This is mainly when I was hitting some clear water that I was, at first a little uncomfortable with, and now I'm getting a lot more comfortable with. And adding that would be pretty sick because my experience with having blades deep is pretty much running a tube with the trailer blade, and that's not this exactly the same. Everyone knows the power of a double 8, a double 9, a double 10, tossing that down 20 feet, 15 feet, as opposed to burning it over shallow weeds is
And honestly,
probably
like
pretty money.
I think I've talked to Herbeck about this a little bit, but he's like, I throw the grenade, especially, and he's talking more like deep bars on Eagle, but he's like, he mentioned that he throws the grenade in situations that he would throw a tube. Like he may
Okay.
not work it the same, but like they fit that scenario so well
Similar
hand in hand.
profile.
Yep. Yep. So I mean, it's just one of those baits that's so different that for most people, like and it's all comes back to confidence. I think that a huge part of the sport is confidence, and I know that you
Mhm.
guys have talked about it on prior podcasts that I've listened to and stuff. But like, it really just comes down to you got to play with the bait a little bit. You got to give it some time to work. Like
Yeah.
sometimes I know my buddy changes baits all the time too quick, and like his confidence relies on like reaction from the fish, and I'll be like, dude, you didn't even throw it by a fish yet. Like maybe we didn't even fish a spot with a fish yet. Like you can't you got to give it at least a little time or a window, or go through a spot that has a couple fish on it and test it out, before you start changing things.
I really wish our co-host Brian was here to hear all that chatter, because that's he's been a little bit guilty of all that. This has been fascinating, and I think we can get into a little bit more bait talk. I do want to be respectful of your time, but like my brain's running a million different directions right now on where this can go. So, you just wave the white flag whenever you're done.
Yeah.
Well,
Um,
here I'll give you an ultimatum. If you guys have me back on, we'll go for as long as you want. But I got to get up. I got to go to San Diego in a week, so I got to get my rest.
Yeah, right.
yeah,
You're gonna be jet lagged.
leave
Yep.
that in. All right, so we can get back to some bait talk, but I do want to touch on this real quick because, one of the first times I've seen your name before this, but we didn't obviously talk at this event, but you mentioned your buddy Sam
Yep.
Stone,
Yep.
and you guys fished in the PMTT in Eagle River, right, last year, and had some,
Oh yeah.
right? Yeah.
Well,
and had
2022.
some-
2 years ago.
Yeah,
you
I should
guys
say
were
2
you
years
guys
ago
were the
now.
big talk last year. You guys killed it.
I guess
Congrats, by the way. I've been meaning to say that. That was awesome to watch from afar. I was definitely I was missing it a little bit.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate that, but that leads me to right into my question then. I mean, if you guys are sticks, it'd be cool to see you guys on the trail again. Has that been a guide and work related thing that you're not able to get out there? And then I do want to kind of touch on a little bit of that Eagle River event, because that was an interesting one. And with the whole blade topics, I think if I remember correctly, you guys did have some success during that tournament.
We got them on Walk the Dogs.
Walk the Dog.
Walk the Dogs. Okay,
Yeah.
so it wasn't blades. All right. Sure.
I did lose one on a trigger though. I did lose one on a trigger.
But
like triggers on the chain.
Is the PMTT something you would consider in the future at all, or do you have fun fishing it when you did? I mean, where are you at with tournament fishing, I guess?
I had a blast doing it. I learned a ton. It was exactly basically what I wanted out of it, right? Like there comes a point, and it's not in everybody's experience, I guess, with musky fishing, or like having, like, not everybody has a career in musky fishing, like trying to make it as a guide or so on and so forth. But like I'd always wanted to try to put myself up there against like some of the top fishermen. And it's like more of an ego thing, right? Like I want to make sure that I feel like I'm as good as I think I am type of thing. And really, however it played out, who cares? At the end of the day, I've
Sure.
come to realize like we're all just having fun musky fishing, but it was insanely cool. You learn so much from musky fishing tournaments in the aspect of like there's a lot of ways to get it done. Like as good of a bite as you're on, there's certainly another situation that's just as good. So
Mhm.
I think when that really set in, or like I came to realize that it also gives you confidence in just your day-to-day fishing, like to go try new things, or to realize that like that there might be two completely different patterns happening at the same time on the same fishery, that if you don't go explore, like you're never going to find that out. So like and this is a little bit of a long-winded addition to the question, but like there'll be times where like the shallow cabbage is incredible in June, and then like also the open water, and the time
Mm-hmm.
frame in which the
Right.
fish are active in both of those areas kind of play into how I go about my day. Like starting the day, the Cisco's are higher, and I might target the open water fish to start the day. But then like for the vast majority of the daylight hours, like we're fishing a completely different pattern, completely different group of fish. And then come sunset, like that window has set itself back up for those open water fish to be basically taken advantage of again. So like you realize that there's a lot of different ways to get it done, and the tournament thing and all of these just insanely quality fishermen will teach you that whether you had a good day or not, you realize like there's a lot of different ways to get it done on the same body of the water. So some of it's just staying confident in the thing that you found, and sometimes it's like you just got your ass beat. You got to take it. You got to take it on the chin.
Well, you
But I will say that we probably I would love to do it again at some point. I think I realized that there's levels to the like levels to it, right? Like I'm the type of person that I would have to put in a certain amount of pre-fishing time to really feel like I did it well. Granted, we didn't catch a single fish pre-fishing in any of
Mm-hmm.
the tournaments, right? Beyond the championship, we didn't catch a single fish pre-fishing, but everything we learned from that then gave us the confidence or the spots or the whatever to then go use during the tournaments and catch fish. So I just couldn't do it if I didn't allow myself enough time, and enough time, it means a lot of money, and then a lot of money means you're not making money. So at some point I'm definitely going to do it again. I loved it. I love testing myself, and I think the tournament aspect, like I've never shaken so bad at a 38 incher in years, but when I caught that one
Yep.
in the championship, I was shaking like a leaf. So I mean, that's the fun part of it, and I think you have a good time seeing everybody and talking with everybody. So that was really cool. But it probably won't happen for a few years. The only tournament I'll be doing is the Lady of the Lake one at the end of October for Geneva, and that's just really because the all the stuff goes back into stocking it with Leech Lake fish, and it's a good program really to just make sure you're investing in the fishery, and it's a fun smaller term. It's growing by all means, and I wish they kind of had it at a different time frame. It kind of lays out basically right in the middle of turnover ish. So it hasn't produced well numbers wise the last few years, but it's a fun tournament. So that's really all I got there.
maybe keeps the public pressure down a little bit if they publish as those term. But I think an interesting thing that you said with two different bites going on, if I remember, because that was Gus and I's actual first PMTT event, the one in Eagle River, and we did it just because it was our home water. And I guess I don't want to spot burn here by uh any means, but yeah, you can cut that out. I was more just kind of just as an analogy, like you guys were, fishing, I know, up in shallow weeds, and we were on that adjacent bay, and both produce fish.
Yeah.
So it's
Well,
just
you
one of those
caught,
things.
or sorry to cut in, but you caught yours the first morning, right? Both of
Yeah, we
them?
caught both of ours during like that major, like 9:30 to 11 something.
Yeah, that's we moved. That was like the only time we moved fish shallow was first day, first morning, and then we got our ass kicked. Weather changed, and that's when we made the jump Sunday to open water when it was late June and we're wearing down jackets and bibs.
So
if you remember that.
what pisses me off about Sunday the most is like Sam and I are like through and through rubber fishermen, basin fishermen. Like that's what we did
Hmm.
all of those years really that we traveled. Like that was like our go-to, right?
Hmm.
And those conditions changed and right away I had one that came in. It was the fish that we moved like we had like 10 minutes left day one, and we had the thing come in like six casts in a row on the walk dog, and then it ended up biting actually, but it didn't really get hooked. So we went to that to start day two. And you guys know how different the conditions were. It was
Yeah,
wild. And then
crazy.
I ended up catching like a shorty in the channel in one of the channels that the wind was blowing through. I was like, well, let's just ride this out because like it's just all blowing through here. There's got to at least be one fish, right? And
Right.
I ended up catching a shorty on a shallow invader, and then I had one other one thick in the weeds that came out of nowhere at the boat and missed a shallow invader. But that's probably that's probably the one point within all of the tournaments that I wish like because that any other day fun fishing we would have guaranteed just went out to the basin and ripped rubber. And I'm like, we did it too long. We never made it out there really. And we
Hmm.
grinded and I was like,
Yeah.
that's the toughest part of tournament fishing, right?
Totally.
Like making that confident decision to change up. But
Fully like 180,
yeah, yeah.
you know?
Yep. But yeah, no, that tournament was a blast, honestly. Like we had zero. We had nothing to go off of. The spot that we caught our first one, I had like maybe a 30-incher eat a single bladed bucktail I tied up like at my feet, and that was the only action that we had the entire pre-fishing. And the other spot was is it Catfish Lake? I don't even know.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had side imaged like three fish on a weed point there like as we were going in. So like that was basically the only two spots, and it worked out where the first time through that spot that we caught the first one, I had it follow. We went around it like in a 360, and we gave it a different angle, and he put the walk the dog absolutely talk about a bait being completely gone. There was nothingness of this 10
Oh
inch
my
walk the dog.
God.
It was all the way gone. And then
That's
like I think
insane.
I want to say that we basically finished that spot, and then we went to the other spot, and like I was like, there's five boats here, but like none of them are on the waypoints that we laid. I was like, perfect. And we were running the GoPro the whole time. I wish I could post this video because it's hilarious. I'm like, wow, they're just gonna let us go right in here, and we're like talking shit, you know. And we pull up, and it was like his third cast, right as we hit the waypoint, he catches another low 40s on the walk the dog, and I'm like, thank you guys, you know. It was
Yeah.
hilarious, but I was like, gotta love it when a
Oh,
plan comes together, or whatever, you
if
know. Keith always says it was funny.
Yeah.
oh, if
That's
we were right
awesome.
there and we saw you squeak in and catch one, we'd probably be pretty pissed.
Oh
Just
yeah,
as
I mean,
tournament anglers, you know.
I
It's just
was
how
just
it
like,
is.
God, all these guys got to be like really pissed right now.
Yeah.
But
That's
it
funny.
was the fun of it. I mean,
Yeah.
sure. I mean, who knows why we caught it or whatever, but like it just worked out beautifully for us.
Well,
Beyond the fact that after day one, we were in second and like seven fish behind.
yeah, I mean, yeah, you guys had great success up in Eagle River, and it sounds like you really haven't spent much time up there, but the limited time you did spend, it sounds like you enjoyed it. Getting to go fish the old chain, bang around on that for a few days, and you guys had some success. What I guess obviously it's so different than what you fish. Obviously in Geneva. I don't know if I've never fished the Fox chain, so maybe it's got some similarities, but did you like fishing up in that northern Wisconsin kind of chain of lakes, dirtier water stuff for a little bit of time?
Um, so I mean, for me, I enjoyed all of it. Don't get me wrong. I will say that like I've fished a ton around the area, but just never on the chain because like
Hmm.
I may have mentioned earlier, but like most of the free fishing that I was doing when I was living in Wisconsin, fishing with sandstone around everywhere, like we were really just targeting the big fish waters. So we never
Hmm.
made it there.
Right.
But I will say that it was the whole PMTT experience for me was so weird for me to go fishing and attempt to pattern off of 30-inch fish. Like that's just not what I do. It's not
Right.
in my blood, right?
Yeah.
So like that was how I ended up with a single eight bucktail on. Was like, give me as much action, find me as many 30 inchers as I can, so I can go back on them during tournament hours. But like that was probably the hardest thing. Like usually Sam and I, the way we fish is just like grab big baits, go fish big fish water, open water, try to find, like, we'd rather one bite than six bites if it's like
For
the
sure.
right fish, right? So it was just different. I would say really the chain kind of laid out pretty similar, like the clarity, kind of the way it fishes in comparison to the fox chain. But it's definitely more of a Northwood style, like a lot more weeds. Like we have good weed beds, but like not nearly as many. So it was kind of an adjustment there for the patterning or fishing style, which ironically enough, of course, we caught two really quality low mid 40 inchers during that tournament. There's so many
Hell of
guys that
fish
came
for
up
the
to us.
chain.
They
Yeah,
were like,
great
you guys
fish.
were on three lakes, huh? And we're like,
Nope.
yeah, yeah, we were.
Right,
Yeah.
for
Oh,
sure.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
definitely.
So I mean that was kind of funny. I don't know. We just stumbled into that to some degree, you know. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I love fishing the Northwoods lakes. I really do. I just I've especially nowadays coming back, moving back down to Illinois and guiding in, the northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin area, and then the little bit that I do out in Minnesota for the middle of the year. I don't get up there as much as I'd like. I love up there, just
Sure.
the vibe and the ability to bounce between a bunch of different waters. But yeah, it was a fun experience. It was new, but I definitely don't see myself on the chain anytime soon.
Yeah,
That's
and I all good there. I
no
think you do.
offense
It is.
taken.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, not at all.
we love the Northwoods because for us it's like you're saying you love your home waters, and for us it's home, and there's more to it than just the big fish aspect up there. It's very tranquil, and it's got some good aspects to it. But yeah, glad to hear that you're hopefully we'll be back on the PMTT circuit hopefully in the
At
near
some point,
future.
for sure.
Be good to have you back and be able to kind of go tackle some new bodies of water. Cause yeah, I agree. I think that's the most fun thing. You talk about it is a little bit ego involved, and I don't think that's an unhealthy thing in some aspects. I think it's
I
okay
don't
to,
think so either.
you know what I mean? Like I think it's all good. Like you want to go there and you want to be competitive. And I think that it's just fun. I mean, it's obviously you're there for the camaraderie and hang out with buddies and fish against really good anglers. But I think it all just kind of ties into itself. Like
It
I
was
think it's a
fun for me
healthy deal.
growing up playing like sports like hockey and golf and like having competitive
100%.
juices flowing, and then you go to college and you don't really put yourself in too many situations that allow for the competitive juices to really get flowing, and it was like a blast to do it in that atmosphere. Like I'd fished other local random small tournaments and stuff, but the 2 day events and just kind of the bigger stage of things, I loved it. I mean, send those juices through me anytime when I'm going musky fishing. I love it.
Yeah. You're talking to two other golfers and hockey players right here. So
We
we
got to
get it.
get on the golf course. I'm arguably a better golfer than I am fisherman, and it kind of screws with me.
Oh no. Oh no.
Yeah,
God, you fucking should be on the PGA Tour then from some
dude.
of the
There's been
pictures you've
many
been
days on the water while I'm guiding. Like fuck, I should be really sitting at the range, working
beating
on
balls.
my freaking short wedges and shit. Not this.
That's awesome.
Uh,
All right. Well, so not to pivot too big, but you did just get back from the expo. Did you take any new baits home with you? Is there anything that's sticking out? We've done a lot of bait talk here tonight. Anything for 2024 season that you're excited to put in your boat and try out?
Bait wise, no. Um, I mean, I
wow.
think I don't know. I don't. I mean, I'll grab some quad dogs, and I will say maybe that's a yes. Maybe I'll take that back.
Yeah.
I think the Reg Lake Edition Beaver, I'm pretty stoked about. I talked to them
Yeah.
about it a little bit, but like that, we've been on them to make that size with the Lake Edition. I know a little bit of difficulty went into getting it dialed in and everything with getting that much weight and that small of a head and things, but it came out great. I'm beyond stoked to have that in the arsenal for this year, but really nothing nothing new. I mean, I grabbed some baits, don't get me wrong, but I didn't get anything new.
Crazy.
I'm just excited for another year. Every year ends, you kind of feel like you learned a bunch, or you dialed this in more. You didn't feel like you got enough out of that situation. So I'm just excited. Every year's I don't know. I love what I do now. I can't complain, but I'm definitely I had the best year I've ever had last year, but I'm beyond stoked about this coming one. So that's plain and simple put that way. Yeah, for sure.
I completely agree. I can't believe you strained yourself from just like buying too many baits. This is the first time I'm going to 3 shows instead of 1, and I already know the damage I've done at 1, and I'm getting a little worried.
Well, see,
I
it's
gotta
much
like,
easier when you're broke and you got to buy a whole new trailer because you had so much
uh,
trailer issues with you. So I was sitting there and I'm like, do I get that? No, yeah, I gotta get it. I gotta get to the lake to make more money. So at some point, so the bait wise, I had
yeah,
to take it easy on.
It
I don't
seems
want
like the
to
ones you didn't. Seems like the ones you used this last year didn't treat you too bad. So
Yeah, bucktails. I mean, like I
get
said,
some
if it's
more.
anything like this year, I'll be plenty good. I don't really have to buy too much new wise, but might have to rebuild a bucktail here or there. But yeah,
That's the best part about bucktails for sure. Just rebuild them. I mean,
yep,
even rubber too. You can reform it. I've seen rubber baits go south though once they get chewed too much or a tail's missing or something. But
yeah.
yeah, damn, yeah. Well, there's probably more avenues we could go through, but
but this has been awesome. We've been
what?
fucking
Yeah, I
just
had a blast.
ripping the muskie talk.
Yeah,
Oh,
this is
I
this
want
is
it to be fucking opener tomorrow, dude. I'm ready to go. Like, get me out there after
well,
this
2 months from now,
conversation.
come on down to Illinois, make a trip. We'll do some ice out muskie fishing.
shit, might have to.
Let's do it.
Seriously.
As long as I
Twist
can
my
hold
arm.
myself back on buying too many baits, I should have a new trailer by then. And we'll be able to get on the lake.
I'll trailer my boat down, no problem. In a
Absolutely.
blink
Let's
of an
do it.
eye. All right. Well, we can't thank you enough for sharing your time tonight. This has been awesome, and we will 100% have you back on. I'll be looking forward to that because a lot of similarities. We've crossed paths kind of, but we've never met in person. We all share hockey and golf, which is good.
Heck yeah.
It's fun. When you're on the boat for 13 hours, you don't have to talk about muskies the whole time. So it's
Yeah.
good to
Yeah.
good to
Actually, anytime that I don't have to is almost kind of refreshing.
right,
As much as I
right.
love it and I'll do this all day, every day, whenever you guys invite me back, I'll love to talk more muskies. But whenever we're fishing, if we want to bring up golf or hockey, I'm just fine with
Sweet.
Oh,
it.
plenty of stories there that we could.
Oh, yeah.
God, I feel like if it was a Friday night and I had another case of beer next to me, this podcast could be like a 4.5 hour mega ep. But
I agree.
yeah, no, I share the same sentiment with Gus. I can't thank you enough. Been following you from afar for a while now, so I definitely respect the hustle and the grind. I know how much that goes into it. Just watching Gus, kind of sift through the same battles that I'm sure you're having, and it's cool to see, the younger generation of guides doing it right, and it's just cool to see success. So, yeah, thanks for coming on, and looking forward to the next time. Try to have you on maybe preseason or during the season, check in, see how things are going. But looking forward to sharing the ball with you hopefully in the future.
Well, like I said, thank you guys for having me on. I had a blast. I'm sure we definitely could have gone for a lot longer. I could tell, but I appreciate it.
Yeah.
We'll wrap that up for tonight. But I think we'll have another good couple as
Oh
time goes on.
yeah. I restrained myself on a few questions to just kind of keep hammering them away before we let you go.
Maybe we should maybe we should plan the next one to be a mega. Just plan for it.
We could
I'm
just get it
down. Do
fully.
I'm game.
a
We'll get
do it
Brian
a
in it
Thursday or
too.
Friday night. Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
get
he's
Brian
got
here.
it. Make
I'm
sure
sure
he's
he'll
not
have
going
some good
to San
questions.
Diego or whatever. I don't
Oh
even know
yeah.
Brian, but I love giving him some shit.
Awesome.
Well,
Well, we'll be touched on that, or we would have already on the intro. So that'll be extra funny that you are giving him shit as
and
well.
Good.
also everybody does, so it's you
We all
you'd
deserve
fit
some
right
shit from
in.
time to time.
Yeah. And
Absolutely, no
actually,
doubt
what is
about that.
crazy is that we're giving shit to Brian on his birthday.
Are you kidding me? Well,
No,
happy birthday, Brian. Oh,
we'll see, we'll see. We'll see if he even listens.
Merry Christmas too.
Oh my god. Oh, that's too
All
funny.
right, let's plug some guide info, and
Plug the
we'll
socials.
save the rest for the part two.
All right, Austin Wiggerman everywhere. If you want to randomly follow the other page, that's just me and my buddies, Fish with Teeth Outdoors. Get a hold of me, 815-575-3468. Call, text anytime. Got plenty of dates for this coming season. I'll be Fox Chain in Northern Illinois, starting April 1st. Then when Southern Wisconsin opens, I'll be on Geneva. And then I'll be spending like the August, late July, August, and early September timeframe out in northwestern Minnesota, Detroit Lakes area, Miltona, West Battle, and some on Leech Lake, and then back on Geneva until she ices up for the season. So looking forward to this coming year. Looking forward to seeing a bunch of the same clients and adding a bunch of new ones to the memory book. So
Sweet. Awesome. Well, can't wait to,
awesome, guys. Appreciate having me on again. That was fun.
yeah, of course. Can't wait to talk again. All right, everybody. We have a special guest and special announcement here. And his initials are GT. GT, how you doing tonight? Heard you're down in Kentucky.
I am. I'm doing good. We're down here in between muskie shows. We just had the Chicago Muskie Show, and we've got the Ohio Muskie Show coming up this weekend. If any of your listeners are in the Columbus or Hilliard area of Ohio, that'll be going on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We got, it's kind of every one of these shows that are in their own little area, with whether it be New York, Pennsylvania, Minnesota, Milwaukee. They've all got little niche markets of certain baits and stuff that you'll find. And we also got a Road Rules event coming up very, very soon.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think he cut out there for a second, but
Anyone?
yeah, I think that'll be okay. But yeah, coming up soon as well as the Road Rules event. Greg, I don't know if you want to give out some info on the dates there, if you got them in front of you, or the website, or where to find it.
Sure. Yeah, no, sure. We're going to be hosting it the first weekend in February. We're going to be doing one at Sportsman's Repair shop there in Mosinee, Wisconsin. It's going to start at 10 a.m. and go to 4. We've got some great speakers lined up, one of which is yourself. Gus, this is your first seminar.
Correct. That's my first seminar. I'm currently thinking of ideas to put into a PowerPoint. I'm about to put it together here shortly, and yeah, I'm really excited to do it. So thank you for asking me to join up on it.
Yeah, no, that'll be good. It'll be really cool. It's going to be you, myself. We're going to have Nate Ospar there. For anyone that's followed the PMTT over the years, they certainly know Nate. Him and his partner Matt Rayleigh have won a lot, done really well. Nate's kind of a local there in Mosinee, and he's going to have a lot of good things to say. And we're also going to have, just this weekend, I locked down Michael Hansen from the Hayward area is going to be speaking as well. So we're going to have 3 really good seminars, or 4, well, 3 really good seminars than myself will be talking. And I
Don't
think
sell
it's going to
yourself
be
short.
it's going to be a great event.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be a good event. I'm going to make Jim put on a little talk about some electronics and stuff. He's always really good at that. And yeah, we're hoping to have some door prizes to give away, some raffles. It's always a good time. You can, for right now, I'm going to try, hopefully, to get a pre-registry going on the website, muskieroadrules.com, MUSKY, for muskieroadrules.com. It'll be the Mosinee Clinic. You can pay right there. It's $45 to get in. Women and children are free. It's a really cool event. We've been doing these now for damn near 20 years, and they've been something really
nice.
really cool that we've done every winter, and looking forward to seeing guys come out to it. And not only that, on Sunday I'll be leaving there Saturday night, and Sunday we'll be putting one on at Thorn Brothers in Minneapolis there on the north side of the city. Right now, I've got myself slated to speak. We've got Luke Ronastrand from Lake Vermilion. We'll be doing a seminar. And we've got the guys from Fish Electronics there coming in to do a seminar as well, talking about rigging and what to get for, basically answering questions of, what trolling motor would fit you the best, what electronics, and all the rigging questions. Again, it's a 10 to 4 seminar right there at the store. We're going to be doing it upstairs at Thorn Brothers. Again, door prizes, raffles, a lot of different stuff. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun for people, and something that everybody's gonna really really enjoy. If you've never done a Road Rules event, they're always a lot of fun. It's a great way to spend a cold day in the winter with friends talking muskies, and you usually leave with some pretty decent prizes.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, everybody come on down to Mosinee at what did you say it again? It was Sportsman's Repair.
For Sportsman's Repair Shop in Mosinee.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be on February 3rd, and then our clinic in at Thorn Brothers is going to be on February 4th, the very next day. It's just a lot of fun. A lot of guys are going to be there, and Jim always rolls out the red carpet for us there at Mosinee. We always have a good little lunch as well, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. It's always a good time.
Sweet. Yeah. For everybody out there looking to ice fish, don't go to the Road Rules. The ice stinks this year, and
yeah, you'll fall
might
through.
As well. Yeah, you're going to fall
ice,
through for sure.
The ice is deadly. It's deadly ice. Yeah. Watch out. It'll bite you. But no, it's just a great way to spend your time in the winter. Keep following, check out the social media stuff, either mine or Tony Grant's or Muskie Hunter, and you're going to see that, we're going to post some more about it and everything. But it's a good time. It's a good event. A lot of people learn stuff, and we've been doing it a long time. And most everybody that comes always leaves learning something, and we get a pretty high return rate. So
cool. Awesome. Well, I'm really looking forward to it. And thanks for coming on, Greg, to share that, hopefully with with some listeners here that are in the area for that. So I'm looking forward to going and seeing some people here before, because it actually, I'll be going to that before the Milwaukee show, which is the first show I'm going to. So are you making it to any other Midwest shows, Greg? Are you going to Minneapolis?
Oh yeah, I'll
Milwaukee?
be at all of them. I'll be at Milwaukee. I'll be at Minneapolis, Columbus, probably Pittsburgh.
Wow.
The only one I'm not doing is the New York show. Never been up there. I heard it's doing pretty well. It's a very niche Eastern show. It'd be fun to go. I'd probably spend too much money on crankbaits, but
right. There's some expensive builders up there that make some pretty cool stuff.
Oh, yeah, but that. So I probably won't make that show, but all the rest of them I'll be there. We've got a few more Road Rules we're going to try to put together. We've also got one we're trying to put together in Brainerd on February 10th. Still working on the speaker lineup there.
Nice.
But, this is all coming together now, and we want to get as many people as we can. And, it's a great way. Again, it's just a great way to make it through the winter and do your stuff. So has ice fishing been any good up there?
It's been decent. I've really just started to get back into it again because I finally got over a gnarly cold, and it's finally not -20 outside. It's been in like the 20s
Yeah,
and upper 20s now, and it's been very modest out and nice, pleasant, I should say, pleasant to ice fish. More my speed. I'm not a super hardcore ice fisherman, but I just got out twice this past week, which marks only the third time I've ice fished since the New Year's, and I plan on going more this weekend, the next week. It's all these warmer temps are gonna get me out of the house a lot more. I'm looking forward to a little exploring.
sure.
So we'll see. We'll see what I
Yeah.
find.
Well,
But yeah,
that's cool. I'm glad you guys could get out, and hey, I'm glad I'm glad you guys could have me on here tonight. I just wanted to make that announcement, and yeah, I don't want to hog any more of your time and get to the real guest.
yeah, sounds good. Yeah, we will. At this point, we'll already have the interview with Austin, and yeah, we'll get you back on again, Greg, to do a full rundown of stuff and things that I know the listeners will want to hear. They really enjoyed our last one, so well, you'll probably say, "Oh, that's surprising," but no, people really loved it. That was a great podcast. We had a blast as well.
All right. Well, you guys take care. I'm going to sit here and scream at the television because Kentucky's playing like shit right now. So, I you guys have a good night, and I appreciate you letting me come on.
Yeah, of course. Anytime. You as well.
All right, Gus, that was an absolute blast. Had a good time talking with Austin. Hopefully, everyone that listens to this that isn't familiar with him, I'm sure a lot of you are. Go check out him on all the socials, kind of see what he's been up to. But a lot to glean from that interview. I mean, we covered a wide variety of topics. Felt like I actually learned a lot about what he's got going on, but I want to hear it from you first, Gus. What was something that stuck out? I'm sure it's going to be hard to pick, but for time's sake at this point, what's
Yeah.
something that really stuck out to you in that interview?
For time's sake, I mean, geez, we dove in a good bit on Geneva and the clarity and fishing clear water. I think those were some of the biggest takeaways that I got on kind of how he fished. It kind of just gave me a little more confidence to go into some of the bodies of water up here and use those same tactics, whether it be the grenade, working it just how I work a swim bait, whether that's stepping off a little bit further, I think being more comfortable with blades in clear water and deep. Some of those things don't sound like they should go together, but it seems like maybe because he's doing things differently like that down there, that's why he's catching so many big fish. I think that's something that we should definitely add to our repertoire on just working baits like the grenade in slightly deeper water scenarios. That just the thing that we kind of were saying during the interview, we're going to go down so many more avenues. I had so many bait questions and so many more things to touch on clear water fishing. I mean, we just talked about blades. We didn't even ask a single question about a crankbait, a dive and rise, rubber. I'm sure he uses the shit out of rubber too.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, we didn't even think about asking that. So honestly, that was the big thing. Blades, clear water equals confidence. That's
Mhm.
that's what I'm gonna find. That's what I took away. So what about you?
Puma and the cheetah, baby. Puma and the cheetah.
Yeah, the
I
Herbie, the Herbie
yeah,
thing. Yeah.
I love that analogy. I thought it painted a really good mental picture. We talk about confidence a lot. I think sometimes even just getting those gears to start to shift in a way where you can see it happening underneath the surface, right? Thought the puma and the cheetah analogy was just great. Outside of that, I think everything he said was great. I will say, I think it just goes back to a lot of times I've touched on this when we've had guests that come on, you know, uh, we're all muskie addicts here. It's a safe space. That's probably why you're listening to a muskie podcast. He's talking about working and fishing, working to fish. growing up, kind of that's how he got his start is, graduates college, and clearly that was just kind of on the top of his mind. He's working jobs, that fit the schedule, make it easy to travel, going to these destinational locations. It's all just cool to hear everybody's individual story about how they got into this sport and kind of how they got the bug, as we like to call it. Just makes me fired up hearing stories like that, knowing that there's other people out there that share the same passion as we do. It's just always good to kind of hear people, talk about it, how they got into it, and kind of where they're at now. He's a relatively younger guy, but clearly in a span of 10 years, like, you have too, has just gained all this knowledge. Like, you can just shows that, you spend enough time on the water doing these trips, like, you're going to learn a lot about these fish, and they're not going to become so far out of reach as they sometimes feel. So yeah, just great interview. Always good, obviously, to see Greg too. Excited
Right.
for your guys' show here in a few weeks to speak at the Mosinee event, Road Rules event that he's putting on. It's going to be great. I'll be really curious. I'm not going to be able to make it, but obviously Michael Hansen being there is going to be awesome. He's a friend of ours. He's got a wealth of knowledge, and he's been just grinding, all the way up until ice up. Hopefully we can have him back on to hear some more about that. Shout out Michael if you're listening to this. Just a true beauty. So good for you guys to connect there at that. And then I think it'll be great to hear. Obviously, always great every time Greg talks. Listen. He's got just a plethora of knowledge. He's a guy that I would go drive and see if I was able to do the Mosinee show. And then clearly seeing Nate Osfer, super well decorated tournament angler, catches monster fish. Seems every time that he's talked on other podcasts, he's a guy that you want to bring out the notepad and listen to and hear what he's doing. So great lineup of guests, Gus. That's pretty cool that you're, a part of that, and excited to see how it goes for you.
Yeah, I'm extremely honored. I want to thank Greg for including me in that seminar, and I'm excited. And at the same time, we'll probably be a little nervous for the first, seminar that I'll ever do. And I mean, geez, we talked so long, I almost forgot. I want to thank Austin again for all the good tips on seminar speaking. And I mean, not only, just like giving me the confidence to be myself up there, like he was given some like in detail, presentation tips, numbers of slides, be sure to not talk during a video, get that all kind of like set up right on how you want it to be presented, and make sure you just, be personable with the crowd that you're in. And that's definitely what I want to do. I want to make sure that I leave it very open for people to ask questions while giving extremely, detailed, awesome things. I mean, I think he's mentioned his Chicago seminar was, I think, about baits. And I think, ironically enough, I think that's what I'm going to make mine about, is the seminar is going to be about baits, overlooked situations and baits, and how to work baits in certain areas in northern Wisconsin, and kind of how it's helped us fish spots in general. I think that's what I'm going to make that seminar on, give or take a slide or two difference on that. But yeah, that was really, really good info from Austin. I'm really excited to see Greg again. Really sad. I met Nate last year at the Wausau show, actually during the first ever podcast I was ever on, 2023 March, with the Roundtable Wausau show with Jeff Widman, TRO, the Backlash podcast. So it'll be good to see him again. Great. It'll be awesome to see Michael Hansen. So I'm really looking forward to that. It'll be my first Road Rules event. And again, if you didn't hear, it's February 3rd in Mosinee, and I'll be posting some more info on that. So So yeah, I think that covers it on tonight's Megapod. I hope everybody enjoys this. We really enjoyed it. Unfortunately, we're missing out on Brian here to give us the old classic outro we all adore at the end of the podcast after a late night, get him rambling at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I know I probably can't do that anymore. So Max, if you don't have anything else to add, we'll catch everybody on the next one.
Yeah, let's put a bow on it and catch you guys next week.
Tune in, tap in, however you want to do it. We'll see you guys on the next one.
Peace.
Peace.